Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Orange County Board of Commissioners here at the Whitted Meeting Facility in Hillsborough. We'll start off with any additions or changes to the agenda, and I'll note that Commissioner Burrows is away and so will not be here with us tonight. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? I have one to suggest. We have a Parks and Rec Council appointment at item 11B. There's been a request to move that up, and I would suggest moving it to making it item 4D, which would be before the public hearings, but and after the manager's presentation of the CIP. Is that acceptable to everyone? Yeah. All right, so we'll move, 11B will now become 4D. And again, that's the Parks and Rec Council appointment. All right, are there any other changes? Okay. So there's lots of information at everyone's places. There's a notebook about the CIP. I think there'll also be a PowerPoint when we get to that. There's a PowerPoint for item 6A. Maybe that's the one that's coming later. There's a PowerPoint for item 6B. There's a handout, blue handout. There's a white handout about the Food Council. There's a couple of draft resolutions, one blue and one purple. Also at your places, and we'll get to those when, I think during commissioner comments and petitions.
Chair Dorson, there's one correction. PowerPoint for item 6A is on its way.
Okay.
It
So
will be here
6A is the Triple Crown Farms
it should be here before that item.
subdivision approval. So that is pending. All right, with that then, we will move on to our arts moment. And of course, we will have our head of our arts program, Katie Murray, make the introduction. I'll just say this is Arts Moment is something we've been doing to introduce to the community at large. Orange County writers, poets, and artists who are working in the community and really help really exemplify the rich cultural offerings here in Orange County, and so we've been featuring various artists at the beginning of each of our meetings.
Thank you. Real quickly, before I introduce Fred, I wanted to invite you all to a collaborative project we're doing all day Friday and Saturday with UNC Arts Everywhere. It's called Monumental Voices, and it's going to be in the former Ackland store space on Franklin Street, open to everybody. So please come join us and express yourselves. So, Fred Joyner is a poet and curator living and creating in Chapel Hill. His work has appeared in Callaloo, Gargoyle, and Fledgling Rag, among other publications. Fred has read his work nationally and internationally. He is a two-time winner of the Larry Neal Award for Poetry and a 2014 Artist Fellowship winner as awarded by the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. Most recently, one of Joyner's poems won the Smithsonian's National Museum of African Arts Divine Comedy Poetry Contest in response to Konate's textile work. As a curator of literary and visual arts programming, Joyner has worked with the American Poetry Museum, Belfast Exposed Gallery in Northern Ireland, Hillier Art Space, Honfleur Gallery, Medina Gallery in Mali, the Phillips Collection, the Prince George's African American Museum and Cultural Center, the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, and others. He is the co-founder of the Center for Poetic Thought, currently based at the Monroe Street Market in Washington, D.C. Fred is currently a board member of the American Poetry Museum, and most recently, and much to our good fortune, the Orange County Arts Commission.
Thank you for that ridiculously long bio. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for welcoming the arts into this body. I'm going to read a poem. Spent some time doing peace and conflict resolution work in Belfast, Northern Ireland, using photography and poetry. And so this poem comes out of that experience. It's called For the Letter H. Just a quick note is that the letter H was a way that people were able to determine what side of the political divide you were on based on how you pronounced it. For the letter H. In the American mouth, sometimes you are a shadow, silent, obedient, knowing your place, an accomplice in language's empire. When leading, you are a turncoat, the hard exhale of hatred, and the disguise you wear in human. You shapeshift in hunger. In Belfast, the sound you make is a fortress, a wall of whispers, a factory that makes martyrs and murals. I listen for the difference between H and H and ponder the weight of blood in a single breath, a single syllable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was moving. We really appreciate you coming and sharing that with us. All right. Next up is public comments, and the board separates the public comments into two sections. At this point in the meeting, we'll take public comments on items that are not on the printed agenda. If you're here to comment on something that is on the printed agenda, you sign up in the back, and when we get to that item, that's when we'll receive the comments on that item. So at this time, we'll hear matters that are not on the printed agenda. And it looks like there's one person signed up to speak, Gary Williamson.
Hello, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Good evening. All due respects, I want to speak on the proposed flag ordinance that you have or have put into place. First of all, I want to start off by saying, if you have 10 people and you put them in a paper sack and you shake them all up, they're all going to have different opinions. They're all going to have different views. They're all going to have different aspects of politics and so on and so on. For that to happen and for somebody to, or elected officials and so on, to take those people in the community and shake them up, and you to decide what they can do and not do on their own personal property that they pay taxes on, private property, to me is a big kick in the rear end to somebody's First Amendment rights and freedom of expression, regardless of what you feel or somebody else feels that what they believe in may be different. As diverse as ours county is, you would think that you would not impede on someone's First Amendment rights or property rights that they pay taxes on in this county. Myself, I am not scared to admit it. I am 110% in support of anybody's heritage, including mine, which is a born and raised Southerner with so many different diverse backgrounds of Southern history. To have that right taken away, even though I know the personal property owner that filed for the permit to have the flag put up, and we're helping him with that, to take that away from him and to take that away from me and the community that supports Southern heritage and history is really, really disturbing to a lot of people. They don't feel like they need to be here because they have a right that they were born with, which was their First Amendment right to do what they want to do on their personal and private property. So you're not going to get a big bunch of people here to come speak out on this because, you know, they're out right now ordering flags and flagpoles and so on and so on. 32 is what I've counted right now and riding around in the proposed zoning that you have had. That's going to probably double in the next week. That's probably going to triple after that. They don't feel like they need to be here because they have a right. You are imposing on that. So, you know, what are you going to do when all those flagpoles start going up on people that we don't even know? Is that something that you're going to send out a group of people out to impose these rules and set fees on their property and take their property? It's a very, very touchy subject that you are doing right now, and it is fixing to get hotter and hotter. I think you need to think again on what you're doing. And think about the people of the community, mostly in the northern part of the community, that some of these zoning rules are set into effect on. That being said, I just wanted to speak out and say, hey, look, very, very closely think this over, because it's going to create more divide. The people that you are dividing, these are not racist people. These are not people that express hate, and I've said this 100 times, and I'm sorry, but find these people that you are pressing against that are expressing this hate in Orange County, any county in North Carolina. I'm a huge Southern supporter, and I can't find them. If you find them, my email address, my phone number is on there. You contact me. I know I do this every day, and I find what's going on out in the communities in our state, and I love our state. But what you are pressing against is not here. So thank you very much, and thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, that was the only person signed up to speak at this time. So now we will go on to announcements, petitions, and comments from board members. Try to limit it to 3 minutes per commissioner. Start with Commissioner McKee.
No comments tonight, other than the fact I had cataract surgery yesterday, so if the lights get too rough on my eyes normally, and I put these on, don't think I'm trying to be Joe Cool, one of the Blues Brothers.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to report that the fence that we asked to be installed on the bridge on Orange Grove Road is complete. It's nice and shiny, and hopefully it's going to keep anybody from falling down onto I-40. I don't need an answer now. I'm glad Mr. Stansel is here. I think it was last year I petitioned about doing some things at the properties that we own to encourage monarch butterflies, to have a program to encourage them. They've declined by 3/4 worldwide in the last, whatever the measuring time was, 10 years. And I think we were going to have a program, but I would like to just have that as an information item. As I reported to the board, the Chapel Hill North-South BRT Policy Committee reconvened after several years of having not met, having decided on a route. And we spent some time talking about a connection to Hillsborough. The consultants had said they would send us their PowerPoint, which had a lot of detail about that, but we haven't gotten it yet. But they've already decided not to go on I-40, but to go on NC 86, which will be an interesting choice. Our staff will have an opportunity to weigh in on that, because I think one could find as many cons as pros going on 86. Solid Waste Advisory Group met last week for the first time in a year. We have a new director, new members, including Commissioner Markopoulos, and next time we'll really get into the meat of some of the items, especially the recycling rates. And we were talking a little bit about maybe moving up in priority recycling food wastes, because that's something that I think is of more and more interest in the community. We're at 62% waste recycling, which still leads the state. On the 27th, Friday the 27th, the Justice Advisory Council is going to be sponsoring a local reentry council meeting, which is the first, and hopefully will put us in position to get some federal and state grant money to continue to do more outreach to people who are leaving incarceration. And I know we got some information from Hillsborough's planning director, but it wasn't very clear on what is going on regarding the two railroads that apparently have jurisdiction over the Hillsborough train station. And Mr. Mann from Go Triangle had met with us almost a month ago and offered to get us a report. He said that shouldn't be a problem. So I would like to ask the chair to just write a quick letter to Mr. Mann asking him what is the delay, Is there anything we can do, and is there anybody else who can give us information? And finally, I'd just like to encourage North Carolina teachers to be empowered by the teachers in West Virginia and Oklahoma, states that are even more crushing in their anti-public education, anti-government legislatures. They're going on strike, and they're actually getting pay raises, and the ones in Oklahoma got a pay raise, and they didn't accept it because they don't have any money for equipment in their classrooms. And in a county like ours, where we value public education so much, you would think that we could get our teachers to join with other teachers from around the country. It's the largest single profession in the United States, and they're tremendously dedicated people, and it would be nice if our legislature could help them do their job.
Thank you. Commissioner Rich?
Three things. The Food Council, what a Food Council does is at your places, something that we talked about yesterday at the Food Council meeting was it's still a little bit difficult to get the message out of what we're actually doing. So this helps a little bit. That second page didn't print though, Donna, so maybe we can get that second page printed.
I can email it to everybody.
Okay, yeah, that's right. We have it electronically. What we're talking about at the Food Council now is how we're going to continue with funding. And it came up at the Assembly of Governments, but we never really came up with any kind of sort of solid plan. And as we're hitting budget season, and the person that's the coordinator, her job would essentially be done the end of June unless we have some sort of plan of what's going to be in place as far as funding. So yesterday we spoke about trying to get the governments involved and everybody to chip in for this. If it doesn't look like that's the way we want to continue, that's fine. But we're sort of up against a time frame here now that doesn't give us any opportunity to do anything differently. So we're hoping that the Carborough, Chapel Hill, and Hillsborough will agree to chip in for the coordinator, and then we would also be doing that. So I'll keep everyone posted on how those conversations are going. They are going. But some good stuff is happening with, we had a report from the farmers yesterday and from the folks that are supplying food to the needy. So those reports will be coming out soon, too. I was at the governor's mansion last Thursday, where he had invited local women in power, which was really nice, to celebrate Women's History Month. And he has a group of women that are working with him, and they're going to present a economic status of women in North Carolina in May. There's a little bit of a cheat sheet that gives us some information, but I signed up. There should be one very specific to Orange County if we already don't have that. So I'm looking forward to getting that, and if we don't get that, we'll try to find the council that's providing it and get it. One thing I was thinking, in March, we haven't really done anything surrounding women and Women's History Month. I know we read a proclamation, but we haven't done any presentations. I'm wondering if we can coordinate with the HRC for next year, possibly to do something around, and I guess this is either a petition or an information, to do something in March. I know we used to have a women's council, but we don't anymore, so it would be, I think, fall under the HRC. And then lastly, there's a lot of stories or information in the news right now about how kids are vaping in school. And when I was on the JCPC, we were talking about this a lot as well. They have these little jewels now that you can get charged into your computer, and they're taking hits off of it in classrooms. I just wonder what our health department is doing around vaping with youth and the schools. Are we coordinating at all with any kind of education about vaping? It seems as though we're missing an opportunity, and more kids are starting to do that. So I'd just like to get some information about that. Thank you.
Commissioner Markopoulos?
Go Triangle Board met last week, and there were 3 items I thought might be noteworthy. One of them was the Transit Advisory Committee was appointed, and it was all the people that we chose plus the remaining members that Go Triangle appointed, so they'll get into action soon. one of the interesting things to me was there was a presentation from this guy from BOCC Companies, which is an international fundraising company that Go Triangle had contracted with to explore how they might raise the amount of money that is indicated in the cost-sharing agreement, which is $100 million roughly. And we were supposed to hear what the person had to say and decide to whether or not to give him the second phase of the contract. And he was very confident and used a lot of examples around the country of similar projects, and he felt like that it was going to be very doable to get that money, and that was the first I'd heard anything concrete about that effort. So he was given the go-ahead to move on and start actually asking for money. And there's already, so $100 million, there's already about 30 or 35 million in-kind contributions, primarily from the universities. And so that counts toward that as well. And then the other thing that was really interesting was, when most people think about the light rail project, they don't realize all the connectivity that results from the transit-oriented development. And there was a really interesting presentation on bicycle and pedestrian connections that will be built around the stations. For instance, people say, Chapel Hill's not really close to the stations down near the hospital and Glen Lennox in that area, which, I've walked that in 10 minutes before, so it's not that far. But there are bike paths that will connect to other bike paths that will make it easier for people to get around to those areas. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Price?
Yes, so I have several things. First, when I was at the NACO conference, the National Association of Black County Officials passed a resolution dealing with pretrial justice and pretrial release. And I know that we've done a lot here in this county about it, but they were suggesting that each of the members, bring this back to our counties. It's on the blue sheet. And consider passing this resolution and then sending it up to our state level. And then hopefully eventually it'll be a national effort. So this is just for our consideration for a future meeting. The other one, I know this is April is supposed to be National County Government Month. I don't know what or if we're doing anything this month, but if we do, this was what NACO was suggesting that we could send out. Send out or a resolution. And the only thing I could think of is if we aren't doing anything, maybe we could, let me back up. Since the initiative this year for NACO is serving the underserved, perhaps we might want to highlight what we're doing either with fair housing or with our Family Success Alliance. Third, I also attended the Women's History Month gathering at the Governor's Mansion, and I think it'd be good to have that data. That is, there's data available now, and there'll be more forthcoming. The council, as Commissioner Rich said, will be continuing to do their work. And and the final thing is that today and tomorrow are days of remembrance, and for many people. 50 years ago today, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King gave his final, and I guess you could say his farewell speech to the people of Memphis and to the world. And this would be 50 years ago today, he gave his I've Been to the Mountaintop sermon. And then tomorrow will mark 50 years since his assassination. And I can remember that night, when my grandmother she shrieked when the news came over the radio that he had been shot. So I just think, I know we've come a long way, but we still have a very long way to go. And I just ask that we as a community and as a nation continue to work together to break down all the doors and the walls and the barriers, and to help bring about civil rights and human rights and freedom and justice for everyone. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That was moving. So I have just a couple of things. One is I got a letter from the Chapel Hill Carborough Chamber of Commerce that says, in an effort to strengthen the partnership between Orange County and the Chapel Hill Chamber of Commerce, and as expression of our appreciation for your continued membership and support, we write today to request that you nominate an individual to represent Orange County government on the Chamber's Board of Directors. So they have revised their bylaws to create an opportunity for a representative of Orange County to serve as an ex officio, non-voting member of our Board of Directors. And so I'm bringing this to the board to see what is the pleasure of the board, if anyone would like to serve in that capacity.
I would think it would be an opportune time for us to participate in that board. If no other commissioner is interested, I would be willing to do it.
Is there any other commission? We could nominate Commissioner Burrows since she's not here. That's always a. but
I'm
if-
not suggesting that we do it tonight. I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. I'm just.
Yeah, we could.
I think it's a good
We could
idea.
wait till Commissioner Burrows comes, when's our next meeting? Tomorrow?
Next meeting is Tuesday, is a work session, a budget work session.
So we could still do it, and I mean, it's kind of an informal thing that we could do at a work
Right.
session if
Yeah.
everyone's here, so.
Add it to the agenda.
Yeah, that would be great. It'll just take a second. So, and Commissioner McKee, I appreciate your willingness to step into the breach.
They might
just-
meet during the day, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can find that out
Yeah.
before that.
Yeah.
I just think that it's
I
an
think it's a good
opportunity.
idea.
I mean, I think it's an opportunity for us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think, as a general rule, when, we've had some disagreements, but now when someone extends the olive branch, it's becoming on us to accept. The other thing we had, there was some email from Commissioner Markopoulos about the arts moment and this question about whether we wanted to open it up to arts groups as well as individual artists. And I know Katie Murray, who was here and left, sent an email back saying she'd be open to whatever the board wanted to do. So right now, she has booked these arts moments all the way through, I think, October with individual artists. So we don't have to decide this tonight, but if we want to direct her to also include arts groups, and things like that, about things they're doing, we can certainly do that. So that's just something else we can talk about, but I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. I believe in having it all at the big table. So, all right. With that, then, we'll go on to the item 4, proclamations, resolutions, and special presentations. Item 4A is Sexual Assault Awareness Month proclamation. The board will consider voting to approve a proclamation recognizing April 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Orange County and authorize the chair to sign. And we have Annette Moore from our Human Relations Commission, and also Julia De Silva from the Rape Crisis Center is here. Welcome. Do you all want to do the introduction and read the proclamation?
She can read the proclamation.
Okay.
I'm never good at that.
I actually have a copy of it here for you.
We
that
have a copy.
I'll give you the
So
official.
if you don't mind, we'll say.
No, that would be great.
A few words. At your place is a teal ribbon that acknowledges Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and a armband for you. So sexual violence is a problem in every community and every profession. Sexual violence persists because of secrecy and inequity, racism, sexism, all the isms. Over the past year, we have seen many headlines that have focused on Me Too, but survivors of all classes exist. According to the National Center for Victims of Crime, 2017 National Crime Victim Rights Week Resources Guide, 44% of women and 23% of men will experience sexual assault. 19% of women and 2% of men will be raped. 38% of heterosexual women who were raped were between the ages of 18 and 24. 28% of those persons raped were between the ages of 11 and 17. So this is a serious issue, not only within our community, but within our country. And so on Sunday, April 15th, the Human Relations Commission will host a forum, Making Sense of It All, Exploring the Complexities of Sexual Harassment, from 3 to 5 right here in the Whitted building. And we're asking people to come and participate. There'll be discussion. Would you like to say something about what y'all are doing? Right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Julia De Silva, and I'm Vice President of the Board of Directors at the Orange County Rape Crisis Center. Thank you all for having me this evening. I just want to say that I've been volunteering with the center since 2010, and I am a survivor as well. And so it's a great honor for me to be here and to accept this proclamation. And I just want to say that if anybody in the room is interested in services or in learning about how to help a loved one, because as she read, the statistics are pretty alarming, and it is very likely that there are many of us in this room. I encourage you to reach out to the Rape Crisis Center, either through the 24-hour helpline. There's individual therapy in both English and Spanish, and support groups as well, and people willing to talk about anything that you'd like to discuss. So thank you.
So, Mr. Silva, would you like to read the proclamation?
Sure. Oh, do you have a? Okay.
After you read it, we'll vote on it.
Whereas the Orange County Rape Crisis Center assisted over 675 survivors of sexual violence, their loved ones, and community professionals during 2017, and whereas the Orange County Rape Crisis Center works with the county's 2 school systems and other groups to provide students with age-appropriate information about violence prevention, reaching over 17,000 youth and adults each year. And whereas the coordination of the Orange County Sexual Assault Response Team is bringing together members of law enforcement, the medical community, the legal system, and other community advocates to improve services for survivors of sexual assault who come forward. And whereas 1 in 5 American women have been sexually assaulted at some point in their lives. And whereas in the United States, rape is the most costly crime to its survivors, totaling $127 billion a year, considering factors such as medical cost, lost earnings, pain, suffering, and lost quality of life. And whereas in the United States, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of sexual or physical violence committed by an intimate partner. And whereas there are more than 16,500 sex offenders registered as living in North Carolina. Whereas victim blaming continues to be an enormous problem in instances of rape and sexual assault, and whereas the Orange County Rape Crisis Center, a nonprofit agency, has served this community since 1974, is working to stop sexual violence and its impact through support, education, and advocacy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Orange County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim the month of April 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month and encourage all residents to speak out against sexual violence and to support their local communities' efforts to prevent and respond to these appalling crimes.
Is there a motion to approve the
So
proclamation?
moved.
Commissioner Jacobs and Commissioner Price, second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Fair Housing Month proclamation. And Ms. Moore, you're back at the podium.
Before we go on, I just want to mention that the reason we don't have a Women's History Month event this month is because we're having Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And so I'll definitely take back to the commissioners, the HRC, about Women's History Month, because we did have a rich history of Women's History Month events in the past. So we'll work on that.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Price took away some of my thunder. So 50 years ago today, Martin Luther King delivered what was to be his final speech in Memphis, Tennessee. In his prophetic speech, Dr. King made the case for nonviolent protests, boycotts, and pushing this country forward to live up to the shared ideas of all of its citizens. The message was right 50 years ago, and somehow it's even more right today. Dr. King was in Memphis because the sanitation workers were on strike, and he said this: "You may not be on strike, but either we go up together or we go down together. Let us develop a kind of dangerous unselfishness." Whenever Pharaoh wanted to prolong the period of slavery in Egypt, he had a formula for doing it. He kept the slaves fighting among themselves. But whenever the slaves get together, something happens in Pharaoh's court, and he cannot hold the slaves in slavery. When slaves get together, that's the beginning of getting out of slavery. Only by sticking together in a determined way can we make America what it ought to be. The next day, on April 4th, he was assassinated. People were in uproar, cities were burning, and the country was in chaos. Out of this came the passage of the Fair Housing Act just 7 days later, on April 11th, 1968. You may have missed the video that we have, but we'll put it on our website, called 7 Days. In 7 days, the Fair Housing Act was passed, and so this is the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act on April 11th. Orange County has enforced the Fair Housing Act since 1998, and we continue to do so. Since I've been in this state, some 20 years, we've lost 2 Human Relations Commissions that used to enforce the Fair Housing Act. Now there's only 3 cities in the state who enforce the Fair Housing Act in North Carolina. Winston-Salem, along with us, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Charlotte-Mecklenburg, Orange County, and the state. We continue to proudly do so. We thank you for your support, and we ask that you designate April as Fair Housing Month.
Thank you. I'll ask Commissioner Jacobs to read the proclamation. If he's so kind.
Proclamation Fair Housing Month. Whereas April 11th, 2018 marks the 50th anniversary of Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, formerly known as the Fair Housing Act, and the 35th anniversary of the North Carolina Fair Housing Act prohibiting discrimination in housing on the basis of race, color, sex, religion, national origin, disability, and familial status. And whereas the Orange County Board of Commissioners enacted the Orange County Civil Rights Ordinance on June 6, 1994, which affords to the residents of Orange County the protections guaranteed by the Fair Housing Act, and additionally encompasses the protected classes of veteran status and age. And whereas Orange County and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as concerned residents and the housing industry, are working to make fair housing opportunities possible for everyone by encouraging others to abide by the letter and spirit of fair housing laws. And whereas the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development annually declares the month of April as the National Fair Housing Month, designating 50 years of opening doors as the national theme and ideal for 2018. And whereas despite the protections afforded by the Orange County Civil Rights Ordinance and the Fair Housing Act, illegal housing discrimination still occurs in our nation and within our county. And whereas by supporting and promoting fair housing and equal opportunity, we're contributing to the strength of our county, state, and nation. Now, therefore, we, the Board of County Commissioners of Orange County, North Carolina, do proclaim April 2018 as Fair Housing Month and commend this observance to all Orange County residents. This the 3rd day of April 2018.
Approve the proclamation.
Second.
Proclamation has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 6-0. Thank you so much. Please accept the proclamation and the thanks of the board for all the great work that's being done to fight housing discrimination in our county.
This is Tara May. Tara is our civil rights investigator.
And can we say that Orange County actually went to court to fight for our right to enforce fair housing? We, against, no, it was employment
It was
discrimination.
employment,
We
employment.
took it against Blue Cross Blue Shield, in
That's
fact.
right.
And I was also, as you asked me to read that, looking up a story I read last week about under Bed Carson, HUD scales back fair housing enforcement. So it's under, even our own ability to do anything, let alone the federal government's willingness, is under assault. So we appreciate that at our level, we're doing the best we can, as we have for, according to the resolution, almost a quarter of a century.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Yeah, we didn't win that Blue Cross case, as we
No.
just
No,
said,
but we,
yeah.
but we didn't roll over
No,
and
we
just say,
didn't.
okay.
But we did, now, another example of this not being able to have some kind of local control over the things that are important in this community,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Did get familial, I can't say familial status. though.
Yes.
That was the big fight, too.
All right, next item 4C is the presentation of the manager's recommended 2018 to 2023 capital investment plan, or CIP. The board will receive the manager's recommended capital investment plan in preparation for board review and discussion at our April 10, 2018 work session. So this is, again, just the introduction of the plan rather than the broader discussion. You can go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm ready when you are.
No,
Chair
go ahead.
Dorson.
I'm having a sidebar.
All right, that's fine, that's fine.
Yeah, no, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair Dorson, members of the Board of Orange County Commissioners. I'm Travis Murin, I'm the Deputy Manager for the county.
Sorry about that.
So as Chair Dorson said, tonight we'll just provide a broad overview of the capital investment plan and then have a more specific sort of project-by-project discussion at the work session on April 10th and also with the joint meetings with the schools on April 24th. So four basic themes emerged from in this capital investment plan. The first is coming up for now borrowing will be the Chapel Hill High School project. As you know, the board and the county staff and the schools have been working on the schools facility work group to work through some of the issues due to the cost escalation of the Chapel Hill High School project, and also the implications that would have on our borrowing schedule and that comply with the school's cash flow needs. So as part of that, the goal would be for that construction to start at the end of this school year. So in order for that to happen, we would actually need to amend the 2017-18 capital budget for our bond sale that would occur at the end of June and for funds to be available at the beginning of July for that contract to proceed on that particular schedule. So that's one of the issues. So you'll see in the presentation, in many of the slides, we'll recast 2017-18, the fiscal year 2017-18, as if that budget amendment has passed, and just so we can illustrate and model for you the cascading effect that has on our debt service payments and our policies with respect to debt service as a percentage of our general fund revenues, and also tax rate implications that might have for repayment. The second theme, of course, is one of the top board goals is to make more progress on affordable housing. So we are proceeding with the second installment of the affordable housing bond in the CIP. Third, in the realm of public safety, of course, the detention center has now reached year one of the capital investment plan. So this capital investment plan includes the first draw on that project, which is about $12.5 million. And then in an effort to smooth both the principal payments and comply with our debt service to revenue policy and the potential tax impacts, we're going to talk a little bit about debt structuring and perhaps using interest-only payments for a certain period of time, mostly during the construction phases of a couple of our larger capital projects, as I said, just in order to smooth out those debt service impacts. This, of course, is subject to approval by the Local Government Commission. We've been in talks with them. We had a first meeting last Friday and are making progress on doing something different from just having level principal payments starting at the beginning of debt service repayment, which is sort of the typical model. So if you look at the 1823 capital investment plan, if we include 2017-18, you'll see the impact of that general obligation bond. Most of that is for Chapel Hill High School. Chapel Hill's, the Chapel Hill Carbo Schools District share of that $120 million bond, you'll remember, was about $72 million. Orange County Schools' share was about $48 million. So if you take that and sort of divide that whole pie chart, or rather the bar chart was the full 6-year period. If you look at that in terms of which share of the expenditures are allocated to which projects, you'll see that the school bond projects comprise about 40%, just regular school capital projects that we do in a typical year, 21%. County capital projects, about 30%. We did include a slice here within the 5-year time horizon of the CIP in years 4 and 5. We do have the Durham Tech Orange County campus expansion beginning. So there is a slice of pie there, a small one, that would be dedicated to the first phases of that project. If you look at this 6-year horizon, just at the schools projects, you'll see how those expenditures would line up over time, again, with that $72 million general obligation bond for Chapel Hill occurring yet in this fiscal year, and then a $16 million general obligation bond for Orange County Schools. The blue bars is the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools. The red bars are Orange County Schools. Then after that, you'll see that things normalize throughout the rest of the CIP to be about $7 million in expenditures annually, 6.7 for Chapel Hill High or Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools, and about $4 million a year for Orange County Schools. In the years in which the Orange County, the red bar is higher, those are the subsequent bond draws for their bond projects. So unlike Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools, that really has one really big project and that has to be funded really in one lump sum, the Orange County Schools projects are smaller individual projects, and therefore we're able to space them a little more evenly throughout the course of the capital investment plan, which of course helps with sort of smoothing that debt service curve over time as those debt service payments come due. Just looking at the county capital projects in both 1819 and 1920, they're about $26 million in total expenditures. And then as we finish off a couple significant projects, those expenditures drop in 2021 through 2023. So in those first 2 years, as I said, basically those larger expenditures are attributable to just a couple projects. One, as I mentioned, the detention center is a total of about a $20 million project that would be spaced over 2 years. So the first draw of that, or about $12 million, $12.5 million, would be in 18-19. The Southern Branch Library, that's $5.6 million. That would also has moved up to occur next year. And then just the affordable housing bond is about 9%. So if you look at those three projects in and of themselves, that's about 73% of the total recommended expenditures for next year, with a couple smaller individual projects, and then everything else adding up to about 13%. Then if you go into 1920, again, you'll see that same theme play out, where a large portion of the total expenditures are consumed by three primary projects. So in this case, three of those projects make up about 65% of the total expenditures. Those are the second draw of the detention center, about $7 to $8 million, the Southern County campus, and the soccer.com phase 2. So moving then to proprietary projects, the board will remember as the CIP is structured, it's structured in school projects, county capital projects, which are largely funded through general fund proceeds, and then the proprietary projects, which are generally funded by non-general fund proceeds. So this would include the work that we're doing for water and sewer utilities through Article 46. This would include the Sportsplex and the Solid Waste Fund, which is largely supported through the Solid Waste Program fee. So here I've just noted a couple of the larger expenditures and sort of what's driving those in each of the fiscal years. So you'll see in 1920, there's a bump up in expenditures for water and sewer projects. That's phase 3 of the Buckhorn and Mebane sewer installation. Of course, as I said, that's will be paid for by Article 46 sales tax proceeds. In 2021, you'll see an increase in the Sportsplex. That green bar is the Sportsplex bar. That's largely due to a rebuild of their ice rink. And then you'll see a larger increase in the solid waste fund expenditures in 2022-23, largely driven by sort of the ongoing vehicle replacements, but the additional project there is the Bradshaw Quarry Waste and Recycling Center. So I mentioned at the outset that in an effort to comply with our debt service to general fund revenue policy, that we were presenting cases where some debt structuring could help smooth out the impact of having one very large project occurring and being borrowed essentially in a single year. So in your CIP, because we don't have a final answer from the local government commission on to what extent that approach is going to be allowable, you'll see the impact that has on our debt affordability policy. So of course, the red line would be if no structuring were allowed. So if all of the principal were required to start being repaid immediately. And you can see why to some that may be attractive, because you gain capacity a lot faster. You start paying off those debt obligations a lot faster. But at the same time, you have to raise money a lot more quickly in order to do that. So as alternative cases, we've presented some structuring of the debt repayment schedule, as you'll see on the purple line and the green line. In the green line, which is our case 2, that's structured in a way that we're complying with the policy throughout the time horizon of the capital investment plan. The purple line, we do exceed that policy in 21-22, 22-23, but that's far enough out and the margins are small enough where that's probably manageable, that by the time we get to those years, things will have changed or projects will have evolved to a point where we can bring that purple line down below the 15% policy. So with that, if you would like to review the document more closely, I've listed resources where you can do that. We've got hard copies, of course, in the clerk's office and the manager's office and the Finance and Administrative Services office. If you don't want to come to Hillsborough, you could check them out at one of our library locations or from anywhere on the website at orangecounty.nc.gov. And then I've just listed our upcoming budget meetings. As I said, April 10th will be exclusively dedicated to the capital investment plan. And then on April 24th, we'll have our joint meeting with the schools where we'll talk about both the capital budget and the operating budget. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any general questions or yield the podium.
Are there just general questions at this time? Commissioner McKee?
I guess it could be considered a general question. Going back to your debt structure.
Yeah.
Second from last slide. On the case one with level principal, I think I heard you mentioned that in order to make those payments, it would require additional revenues. Am I correct on that? Is that signaling that we would need to put in tax increases to cover that? Or are we anticipating?
Right. Yeah, so like I said, in order to, because that principal is hitting a lot faster, well, there's more of it, and it's hitting faster in those early years, the early year increases, the tax increases that would be required to pay for that would need to be bigger than they would under the other cases.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Jacobs?
So when you come back with more detail about the CIP, can you project the tax increases, and can you project, will they ever go down? Or is this going to be baked into the county budget because we have to pay for this long term?
Yep. So I can tell you that at least in cases 2 and 3, those scenarios are what you saw at the retreat. Somewhere between 4 and 5 cents.
Going out how far?
Well, at least until this 2024 or 5, but I'll get that more detailed item back to you.
So that would be about the time that the schools want the second bond for additional?
Well, that's when our debt capacity would start freeing up. Sure. So at that point, you could maintain some sort of the same level of taxation and have some room to pay for additional capital.
So one might project that it'll be, if not a permanent tax increase, it'll be a tax increase for the foreseeable future.
You know, that's a policy decision up to the board.
And when you come back next week, could you explain to us, because I don't understand why so much money needs to be spent on Chapel Hill High right up front?
Sure, absolutely.
Other questions? Commissioner
Yes,
Price?
kind of related to that. Does this assume that the percentage of our fund balance that we use will remain the same?
Yeah, so that policy will remain at 16%. This policy is the amount of debt service, you know, the payment on our loans that we pay every year as a percentage of total general fund revenues. So they're related, but a little different metrics.
Okay. And I also had a question about the schools. It looked like a lot for Chapel Hill at one time, and then I'm looking at the other schools in the Orange County system. Is there maintenance of the schools built into this as well?
So this
While they're waiting, for the Orange County schools to be rebuilt or whatever?
So all of these projects that are included here are, especially the bond projects, would be the same projects that you've seen in their facilities reports. So last year or the year before when they were presenting all of the needed improvements to schools. All of those not all of those are funded here, but those are the types of projects that are funded. The maintenance part of that would be largely in the operating budget.
Well, I say maintenance only because, you know, if they have to wait and the schools are in bad physical condition, that's what I meant by maintenance. You know, is there something being done to to stabilize the conditions until such time as the major renovation can take place? Is that,
So,
I mean, when you're spreading it out,
right.
you know,
so
something's going to suffer.
For Orange County schools, they're comfortable with this project schedule, and it may be, they haven't asked to advance funds, and like I said, I think that's largely because they've got a lot of smaller individual projects compared to one really expensive, really complex project.
Okay.
Commissioner Rich?
Is the 21% for the school capital project, is that included in the 48.1% goal that we try to hit every year with the budget for the schools, or is that above that?
So the 48.1% is the percentage of the operating budget.
Right, so this is in addition to?
Yes. So
Okay,
that's it.
so when you come back and we start talking about it, could we just have an idea of how much, what percentage of money we've been giving to the schools all along for the capital projects and maintenance and, you know, things that above the 48.1% that have been given to the schools? Because it's not clear when folks are talking about maintenance and repairs that the schools are getting a certain percentage of money every year. It's clear to us, but it's not clear to the public. So I just want to make that clearer as we're discussing this in a work session.
Other questions? Just had one, you mentioned having to get approval from the LGC. So the three options that are on that slide, that slide actually that's on the thing, all three of those or would require approval from the LGC or just?
Yes.
So any
Yes.
of them?
I mean, the red line is what, like I said, what they typically see from everybody. We're asking them for some consideration because of our affordability policies to be able to smooth those payments out over time.
And the 15% policy target that's on there?
Yep.
Is that set by the LGC or is that set by us?
No, that's a locally established policy by the board.
So we could revisit that if we wanted to.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Anything else? All right, well, we'll look forward to
Thank you.
wading into the water on April 10th on that. So thank you. That was a good presentation also. It's very helpful. Okay, next up, we moved up item 11B, which is the Parks and Rec appointment. So I think I saw Mr. Stansel here. Mr. Stansel, if you wanted to come forward and give us any information about this, and we appreciate you getting here and being here.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to speak to the County Government Academy that's also meeting tonight. This is a position, we have a member of the Parks and Recreation Council who is in the Town of Carrboro seat, who is not going to be able to continue to serve. And the council did find a person who had applied that brings some interesting background, particularly in terms of health and linkages between health and parks, that they would like to bring forward as a proposed appointment to replace the person who actually, I guess, Saturday, her term expired. And I'll be glad to
All
answer
right.
any other questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Stansel on this item? Again, this is item 11B, considering an appointment to the Parks and Recreation Council. If not, a motion would be appropriate at this juncture.
I move that we appoint Michael Zellick to the board, to the Orange County Parks and Recreation Council.
Any discussion? All right, there's a motion made to appoint Michael Zellick to position 1 as the Scarborough City Limits representative. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stansel.
Thank you.
All right, leaping back into the agenda appropriate order, we have item 5A is a public hearing on the Orange County Consolidated Plan, the Annual Action Plan Update, and proposed uses of the fiscal year 2018-2019 home funds. The board will receive input from the public regarding the proposed annual action plan and update of the fiscal year 2015-2019 Consolidated Plan for Housing and Community Development Programs in Orange County, as well as the proposed uses for the 2018-2019 home funds. And I'll ask Cheryl Hampton to come forward. Oh, no, here you are. Cheryl Hampton will make the presentation, and then we'll have the public hearing. I know there are several members of the public here to speak on this item. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Chair Doris and other commissioners, Board of County Commissioners. We're very pleased to be back before you. As you may remember, in December, we had our needs assessment public hearing, and this public hearing is the second public hearing within the planning process. Each year, the federal government requires that communities receiving federal assistance like block grants, CDBG, home, and others to reassess the needs of the community. We have the current consolidated plan, which is a 5-year plan, and each year we have to annually update that plan. And so that's the information and the purpose for us being here. The action plan is just a guide for how the county will allocate its resources for specific activities in support of those identified priority needs in the 5-year plan. And just to summarize those, the plan identified 6 priority areas, all the way ranging from housing and many categories under housing, social services, community facilities, homelessness, and economic development. Of those that relate to home, because home specifically focuses on housing and support activities under housing, the greatest need was to provide a continuum of housing options for our senior citizens, rehabilitation of the existing housing stock for low-income, low and moderate income persons, both single family as well as rental, to provide affordable, accessible units, overall to increase the supply of our affordable housing stock, and mobile home parks was also included in that, or the quantity and quality of naturally occurring housing units. So we know that our low-income, low and moderate income families were impacted, but our very low-income individuals and families are in dire need. That continues. All of these findings were also identified in the consolidated plan that we are going by, our 5-year plan. So I'm going to stop now. I have staff here with us. I'm going to ask that Ms. Renee Holmes comes up and provides you in attachment A just a brief overview of those projects that were recommended by the Local Government Collaborative to you. And then I would ask, Mr. Chair, if you and the commission would allow us to go into the public hearing and receive comments after Ms. Holmes comes. I also have Mr. James Hutchison from the Housing Department staff, who is one of our rehab inspectors, if you have questions regarding our housing rehabilitation activities. But at this time, I'll ask Ms. Holmes and then turn it back over to you to open the public hearing, if there are no questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Hampton? All right, Ms. Holmes, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The Orange County Local Government Affordable Housing Collaborative met on February 21st to review home applications for fiscal year 2018-2019. The funding recommendations are as follows. Community Home Trust for homeowner assistance, $60,000. Empowerment, rental assistance, rental acquisition, $145,000. Habitat for Humanity, Second Mortgage Assistance, $60,000. Interfaith Council for Social Service, Rapid Rehousing and General Tenant-Based Rental Assistance, $25,000. And Orange County Housing Rehabilitation, $49,211. And we also will receive administrative dollars in the amount of $28,969. Are there any questions?
Are there questions? Commissioner McKee?
Yes. In the past year, do we have any of the approved funds revert back because of unuse? I think in past years, and I may be getting this program mixed up with something else, we've had some reversions. And I just want to make sure we don't allow any of these funds to revert back because we don't have projects approved for them.
Yes, we had one reversion this past summer, but that was on older projects. That was before my tenure began. We had to send back roughly about 40,000, what was it? That was 26, so the total was that 46, and we sent back 20-some odd of it for home.
Go ahead.
That question not meant to criticize. I just want to make sure
didn't
that
take
we
that way.
try as much as possible. And I know sometimes it's impossible to catch everything, but try as much as possible not to let any of these funds revert back.
I and staff, we've been working, and I share your concern and shared the concern as the county manager was certainly concerned about our reversions. And that is why we took to the collaborative in February, as Ms. Holmes said. We're going to put out a second RFP for our CHOTO funds, about a total of somewhere between $60,000 that we'll be putting out again, and you should see that. That will be out. That will be a quick turnaround time because those funds have to be committed by August 31, 2018. So in this annual plan, we will have 2 rounds, a regular round for general projects, and then our CHOTO funds. And that's where we've seen some reversion on our CHOTO funds. We have 2 CHOTOs in the county.
Thank you.
Commissioner Price?
Yeah, you answered one of my questions. The other one, the housing rehabilitation for Orange County, is that part of the, not rapid, but similar to Brushwood County, where the county assists people with small repairs?
Yes, Commissioner, we have several, and in the restructure that staff and I are working on, what we've looked at is a broad category of housing rehabilitation. Under housing rehabilitation, we have urgent repair.
That's the one I was.
And the urgent repair is just that for the elderly and disabled or handicapped, goes up to $8,000 per unit. So we have a state grant, and we also have local funds that you all provided to us.
So this would not be?
No, we're not reverting. Any of that is going back as far as we know.
No, not reverting, but it's not part of what you're asking for in this request?
No, these are home funds, and home funds can be used for not only rehab, but they can also be used, single-family and multifamily rehab, acquisition, second mortgage, home buyer assistance. So these were the funds that were remaining after our projects, and we felt that we see such a great need in the housing rehab of our existing older housing stock that the board allowed that fund, those remaining funds of $49,000 to be used. So we're leveraging.
No, I wanted to see more go in there, that's why I was.
Right, state, federal, and local funds.
Okay.
So, yes.
Other questions, Commissioner Jacobs?
Well, I think we should be proud of the fact that we picked up urgent home repair when the state cut it. So we're able to address the groups that you mentioned. I've heard concerns raised previously that the Urgent Home Repair Fund isn't very facile in responding to people's concerns. There's a long waiting list. Have you seen that, and have you had an opportunity to address it?
Yes, the team and I, housing team and I are working on that. I came in and found that. We have put some safeguards in place, and I think in the coming fiscal year, you will see, and our constituents, our residents, will see a change in how we're doing that. And that's why we need the additional funds to leverage as well. But many of the homes who come in for urgent repair have code violations. So they're coming in just to kind of get one thing addressed, and it's much larger. We find it is much larger than that. But we are increasing our nimbleness and responsiveness.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, then, let's go ahead and open the public hearing, and we'll hear from folks who have signed up to speak on this matter. There are several folks signed up to speak. So first up is Jenny Prater, and then is Marissa Martini.
Hello. So I'm Jenny Prater, and I'm definitely glad to have the opportunity to share my story and really put an importance on why affordable housing is a necessity. So I have a Habitat for Humanity home. I've been living there since 2011, and definitely proud of being able to build my own home and know what's in my home. So I have 2 kids. My son's in 8th grade and my daughter is in 5th grade. And as far as my prior living situation, which is the main reason why I was able to get a Habitat home, I was in a duplex apartment that was not a very nice apartment. I tried looking for houses, and this was like back in 2009, 2010, and I couldn't find anything in my budget that wasn't like an old rundown 1970s or older house that would have taken a lot of work. That's all I could find in my budget. Unfortunately, with my divorce, my ex-husband ruined my credit, so I could not get a decent house. I have a stable job at UNC, which I'm definitely proud and happy with, but that wasn't enough. So I was definitely grateful for Habitat for Humanity. And so I just want to further along the importance of the home fund and the fact that it helps with the second mortgages of Habitat, because I have that. I actually have a 3rd mortgage, so it's all lumped together, and that's how I'm able to get my house, and it has helped me in so many ways. Let's see, the sense of security, definitely. In the apartment I was in, it wasn't a very nice area, and my house was broken into a couple of times, and so that's really scary, especially when somebody somehow has a copy of your key and comes in your house whenever they feel like it. They never steal anything, but you can tell they were there. So that's not a fun feeling. So I'm glad to be in my Habitat home. Just the stability of having a home forever instead of being in apartments and moving whenever the rent goes up. So the stability of having my own home is great. And then the financial impact, being able to afford my home, the fact that my house is green, my bills are so much lower than the average home. I get the reports from Duke Energy every month about how the power usage of my house is lower than even the average greenhouse. So I'm doing good. And so I just want to make sure that you guys vote on this and continue with this for as long as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Marissa Martini, and then Norbert Ronyambo.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Marisa Martini, and I work for Habitat for Humanity of Orange County as our Community Development Manager. I first want to thank the Board of County Commissioners for your commitment to affordable housing and for your support of Habitat. Habitat has been building homes in Orange County for over 30 years and has built more than 270 homes throughout the county. Most of these homes have received home funding in order to help make them affordable to home buyers who earn less than 60% of the area median income. The home funds requested this year will be used as second mortgage assistance for 2 newly constructed homes. One of these homes is located in our Tinnon Woods subdivision in Efland. With your support of our funding request, all 30 of the homes in Tinnon Woods will have received support from the home program. We are looking forward to starting construction on our last 2 homes in Tinnon Woods this month. The other home will be in the Fairview community. We have built nearly 50 homes in Fairview over the past decade. This home in particular will be built through a partnership with Orange County Schools construction program. Through this partnership, students in Orange County High School build the home with financial support from local businesses who help pay for the building materials and labor that's subcontracted out. We are grateful that our request for $60,000 in home funds is being recommended, and we encourage the commissioners to support our request. We have several Habitat homeowners here in attendance tonight who either own or are on their way to owning a quality, affordable home in Orange County, due in part to the home program. I ask that some of our homeowners in attendance please stand or at least wave to just note that they're here today. These homeowners chose to be here tonight as a show of gratitude to the commissioners for your support of Habitat and your commitment to affordable housing. A few of them will be sharing their stories with you this evening, as you already heard one so far tonight, and you'll be able to hear firsthand how affordable housing has impacted them and their families. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Norbert Runyambo, and then Jackie Jenks.
Good evening. My name is Norbert Runyambo. My family and I recently purchased a Habitat home in Fairview community in Hillsborough. First, I would like to say thank you to the Orange County Administrator, to the support of affordable housing. Without your support, there would be several families who don't have a place to call home. In my case, since we moved in USA 10 years ago, we have lived in an apartment, found an apartment fitting 10 people comfortable was impossible, especially with limited resources. We moved in North Carolina, Chapel Hill, 5 years ago. We had our family in 3-bedroom. Now, not only it was uncomfortable, but also it was expensive. After moving in Habitat home, we feel more like home because our children have more space to study, having their own space. We can make projects that we could not do in the apartment. We are making gardeners. Also, my bill has gone down about 1/3 of what I used to pay when I was in my apartment. The well-being in my family is not only the housing or the house. We have children who like to sing. In the new house, we can provide hospitality. They are free to sing, to pray, to dance, even to make a little noise. By providing funding for affordable housing, you not only help anti-family like mine, but you also help anti-community. The people in this community will become productive and positive citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie Jenks, and then Neri Rita.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Jackie Jenks, the Executive Director of the Interfaith Council for Social Service. I want to express our gratitude and support for the consolidated plan and the proposed uses of the home funds. The list includes many of our affordable housing partners and some much-needed projects. And I wanted to talk for a moment about the Home Consortium's homeless priority and the continued support for homeless prevention and tenant-based rental assistance. IFC has 76 households living in our shelters, 52 men, 14 women, and 10 families at any given time. Most, if not all, of our residents are at 30% area median income or below. Of the 468 housing units in Orange County that are considered permanently affordable for those in that income range, 0 are currently available. And only 46 units are in the pipeline for that group in the next 5 years. So of our 76 households, not all of them would be able to move out of the shelters in the next 5 years. Because of the lack of permanently affordable housing, many of our shelter residents and those living outside must attempt to move into market rate rental units. In order to afford these units, they must layer subsidies until their SSI comes through, until they are able to secure a voucher, or until they're able to increase their earning potential enough to afford their units. Funding such as tenant-based rental assistance provides much-needed temporary subsidies to assist residents like those at IFC in moving out of homelessness into housing. So I really want to express our support and thanks to the Commission, the manager, Ms. Hampton, and all of the staff for your attention to issues of homelessness and affordable housing in Orange County. We know that you understand the issue and the importance, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Neri Irushia, and then Robert Dowling.
Hello, my name is Neri Urrutia, and I'm here to say a few words in the name of the Habitat for Humanity's homeowners of the Orange County. I think that it is healthy, it is worthy, and it is smart for the Orange County to keep supporting programs like the Habitat for Humanity. The reason why I say this is because it is not healthy, not human, and not fair to have for people to be living under bridges, in their own cars, or in the wood, and even on the street, just because they cannot be able to pay rent, that it is very expensive to pay. We are living in a moment that for a working person like me and many of us that are in this room, it is better to live in an affordable house like the ones that Habitat for Humanity does than living in an apartment. With the Habitat for Humanity, a house can be able to be paid everything, including bills, than what it costs to rent an apartment. Therefore, in the name of all the homeowners of Habitat for Humanity for the Orange County, we request the permanence of the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Dowling, and then Dolores Bailey.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Robert Dowling from Community Home Trust. And as you just heard from the folks before me, housing is becoming a more and more difficult problem and challenge throughout Orange County and throughout many parts of our country. Wage stagnation, jobs that are disappearing, inadequate supply of housing, all add up to housing challenges to any place that's growing, any place, big cities, medium-sized cities, college towns, and we're a place that's growing. We attract people, people are coming here, and the housing that is built for people who have a lot of money. Anything new is very expensive. So the affordable housing stock is not being increased. And we're fortunate to live here in Orange County with compassionate elected officials like yourselves. That bond it's irreplaceable, that money. And I'm sure it's going to be put to good use. We're lucky that the home funds have been, I think they're actually increased a little bit this year, and they haven't been eliminated. We need all the funding we can get because there's so much demand for both, as you heard, homeownership housing and for rental housing, as Jackie just talked about. If you make less than 30% of median, it's very difficult to find any place to live. Cheryl has recommended, and her committee has recommended, $60,000 for us. $40,000 of that will be used in the North Side Initiative, where we're partnering with Self-Help Credit Union and Jackson Center. And we haven't identified the house. We hope that can be used for 2 houses, but in North Side, home prices have been moving up. And they're expensive, and so $40,000 may just be 1 house. $20,000 will be for resales of our existing inventory. And again, we don't know which homes will come on the market in 2018-19. Hopefully that $20,000 will be available for 2 homes. But again, we don't know. So at a minimum, that $60,000 will be used for 2 homes, at a maximum 4 homes, most likely 3 homes. We're grateful for your support. The subsidies are absolutely essential, and I think we have some great partners here in Orange County that do a lot of work, a lot of good work, and we're lucky to have elected officials like yourselves and the folks in Chapel Hill and Carver. Thank you.
Thank you. Dolores Bailey?
Chairman Dorson, Commissioners, Madam Town Manager. My name is Dolores Bailey. I'm the Executive Director of Empowerment Incorporated, owner of 42 scattered site affordable rental units and growing. I'd like to thank this body for several reasons. First, on this Friday, April the 6th, Empowerment will close on one of our bond projects, 606 Bynum Street, that has the 2 houses on it. This property with the 2 houses, the second property has been dedicated to Family Success Alliance families. And in May, a single dad, formerly homeless, and his 2-year-old daughter will move into that home. We're very excited about that. The second thing I'd like to thank you for is something that Commissioner Rich and I talked about last week on the radio. Thank you for having the foresight to put aside money for mobile home displacements. Who knew that the project would be as big and major as it has become? So thank you for that. It's not enough, but we are certainly proud to be able to help some of these families figure out where they're going to go and how they're going to get there. I've had the pleasure of working with both the Lakeview community and also the Homestead community, so thank you for that. The third thing I'd like to thank you for is because with your help, Orange County Commissioners, Empowerment is going to bring on 9 new affordable rental projects before the end of the year, and I'm very excited about that. A lot of those were purchased with the help of home dollars. And tonight, I'd like to thank you for the recommendation that the Ms. Hampton's department has come up with for Empowerment to purchase a home on Cole Street. We're purchasing the home out of the Northside Initiative, so it's the collaborative working together again. Empowerment was able to come to the table with some leveraging dollars, which is what I heard the last time we did the event. And we're going to ask Self-Help to help us renovate the project, but it should be ready to be moved into in short time. So I'd like to say thank you for all you do, for how you think about affordable housing. You know that I've been here for 15 years crying for and begging for and helping and needing the assistance. The need is great. And thank you for what you are doing and how you're able to help.
Thank you. And thank you for those Tums last time. It's a lifesaver. So All right, with that, we can close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 6-0. And now, are we supposed to take action on this tonight? All right, so then this will come back to us in May for a final vote on this. Commissioner McKee?
Mr. Chair, if I might, I'd like to thank the providers for leveraging funds, which gets more work done with the dollars that we provide, but especially thank those folks that spoke that have been beneficiaries of some of these funds in the affordable housing and Habitat for Humanity for coming and speaking, to put a public face on something like this rather than just having a paper abstract or presentation by staff really makes it more effective.
Absolutely. Commissioner Price?
And I have a favor for those of you in the housing, doing the housing work. If, when you, as you get these monies from the federal government, if you could let me know how much they leverage, if I get their report, because through the National Association of Counties, staff and commissioners and whatever, we've been using that information to lobby Congress and HUD officials or HUD staff to get more money to stabilize it and to get more. And we know that this year there was bipartisan support to continue the various housing programs, whether it's home or CDBG or EDA, but what seems to be the significant factor is how much money the federal dollars leverage from other sources.
Other comments? All right, I want to echo Commissioner McKee's comments. Thank you all so much for being here and for sharing your stories. Very powerful and moving testimony, and another reminder of why this is such a high priority for the commissioners and for the community. All right, next up, we're on to the regular agenda. It's odd that we get to the regular agenda so late. We should think about renaming these headings.
Oh, yeah.
It's all the regular agenda in some ways. There's nothing irregular about it. But we are at item 6A, which is a major subdivision preliminary plat application for Triple Crown Farms. The board will consider reviewing and take action on a request to modify a previously approved major subdivision preliminary plat application. Patrick Millett is here to make a presentation. Welcome. It's always good to see you.
Commissioners. I'm here to present the Triple Crown Farms item in your packets. We're passing out hard copies of the PowerPoints, and I'll go through those in just a minute. This is your standard abstract packet with the basic site information, pages, and the standard packet that we would prepare, pages 1 through 7 of your agenda item, and then attachments 1 through 9. I would note, as usual, the most important one is on the back end, the resolution of approval, which is attachment 9, which contains our conditions or proposed conditions of approval. This subdivision should be familiar to a fair number of you because it was approved by the Board of Commissioners, reviewed by the Planning Board, and went through the process for a major subdivision back in June. It was approved by the Board of Commissioners in June of 2014. Since that time, the developer has been working with various state and federal agencies to get various permitting, including their environmental permits for stream crossings with DOT and so on and so forth. It's taken a little bit longer than average, unfortunately, for the developer. The original project engineer passed away, so there was some design lag time associated with that. But just to orient you, this is Dairyland Road as it comes around. If you're coming around this curve, you're headed towards Calivander. If you're headed in this direction towards the north, you would be headed towards Mapleview for perhaps some ice cream. This area to the north is on the northern edge of the entrance to what is Triple Crown Estates. It's technically the same developer, different subdivision, but the same sort of theming and marketing. Triple Crown Farms is the 104 acre site to the south that was previously approved. And I'll get into the changes that the developer is requesting in just a minute. Land use element plan and the comprehensive plan says again it is rural buffer. Triple Crown, just to orient you, is this roughly in this large star here. Growth management system, it's designated as rural, again, large star. This is the revised preliminary plat, and it, to a large extent, is identical to the plan that was previously approved with 20 lots. The changes are, this was originally 2 lots. One person purchased 2 lots and decided they were going to build, they wanted both the lots, so they combined those into one larger lot. So that reduced the total number from 20 to 19. And that was done via an exempt subdivision. The original plan called for a reservation for a potential fire pond for the fire marshal. The fire marshal at that time thought, hey, I might need some fire access for fire water suppression. Since that time, they've discovered Awassa services that would meet those needs near Calivander, so he no longer needs a fire pond. Other than that, the general layout is the same, the open space is the same, everything is fairly much the same. The big portion of the request is the developer is requesting, after having extensive meetings and discussions with NCDOT, they've come to the realization that these crossings, the crossings for Gallant Fox Court and Secretariat Road, this is Gallant Fox, this is Secretariat here. I think the developer tried to meet the intent of the 401 and 404 permitting with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Environmental Quality at the state level and minimize the stream disturbance, the channel disturbance, only to find that DOT standards would require additional wing walls, additional disturbance, and additional cost. So what the developer is requesting is to change the original requirement to build those 2 roads to public road standards, NCDOT standards, to private roads that are paved 18 feet wide, privately maintained roads. They would feed off a state road. This road, which was built by the same developer, has already been dedicated and accepted and maintained by DOT. So these 2 private roads, if approved, would connect to a state-maintained road system. And I'll come back to this in a minute. Plan overview, same acreage, approximately 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres is the density. The average lot size is 3 acres. The common open space, 38.53 acres. It translates to 41.4% open space. Just a few pictures and then we'll move on. This is the intersection of Triple Crown Drive and Dairyland Road. This is if you were headed towards Mapleview. This is the same intersection facing towards if you're going towards the Calivander area. This is the first street, the largest, and this is a view standing roughly near the existing traffic circle, headed towards the stream. You can see this is what they call a conspan. It's a large metal pipe structure that has masonry on either side and these gates here. This is not paved yet because they're obviously into construction. And as a parenthetical, they've worked with our erosion control and stormwater staff and had all of the various permits that we would require to do the land disturbing activity that they've done to date. This is a view from up near Triple Crown Estates, looking off to the road in the distance. This is standing on that road, headed facing towards the traffic circle. And this is the view of the traffic circle headed out towards Dairyland to the main entrance. And then the recommendation is the typical recommendation. Planning board, the planning director recommends that the preliminary plat application be for the revised Triple Crown Farms, so that you consider that, deliberate and discuss the proposal, and then if you choose to approve the plat, that you would look towards the resolution of approval and the conditions thereof. I think from the staff's perspective, our major concern is the way this normally transpires over time is your average home buyer, if not informed, would not understand the implications of a private road versus a public road. And our concern is that if you make this change, that there needs to be a disclosure statement, much like if any of you have ever purchased a home near an airport, you typically sign a disclosure stating, hey, you live near an airport, there's noise associated with that. You're acknowledging that the noise exists. This wouldn't relate to noise, but it would be a disclosure statement that would basically acknowledge these are privately maintained roads, and changing them to NCDOT public maintained roads would require significant design, permitting, construction, and cost.
Is that included in the recommendations in the resolution, that
It is.
disclosure?
We have a litany of standards, conditions of approval, but that is part of it. And then that language would also be included in the road maintenance agreement as well, in the covenants. And that's really what the developer is seeking, is because my understanding is, after meeting with DOT and trying to adhere to their standards, and the realization that that would have more disturbance, more cost, significant cost. They needed to ask to change the status of the roads. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and the developer and his engineer is here as well. So.
All right, are there any questions for Patrick, and then we can hear from the developer? Commissioner Rich?
Yeah, just to go back to the road and putting, what I don't know what you call it, a disclosure for folks before they buy their property, that they know that the road is private. How long does that last? Does that continue on every time someone buys the home? So if you sell the home, does the disclosure follow the home, or is it supposed to, or how does that work?
I would think it would. What we would require is that would be recorded with the plat. So your typical closing agent would have a packet ready that would include, here's a copy of the plat, here's a copy of all the recorded documents that are associated with the property that you're purchasing, and they would see it.
Is that
That
correct?
would show up with a title search. Yes.
Okay. Because the reason I ask is, over and over again, we hear from people that are near economic development areas or something that they didn't know it, and no one told them, the real estate person didn't tell them. So this is something that would show up as soon as they did a title search?
Yeah, we've done a number of these road maintenance agreements for private road subdivisions since I've gotten here. Yes, there will be something recorded with the Register of Deeds office.
Commissioner McKee, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I believe Commissioner Markopoulos was in front of me.
I think you were next.
Okay. Would you mind flipping back to the third photograph, please? What I'm seeing here is a culvert that's already installed. Am I correct on that? On this particular?
It's similar. It's called a conspan. It's basically a metal.
Yeah, but it's already installed.
Yes. Well, being installed.
Okay. I'm not exact. What I was thinking was that the bridge installation, or the need for a bridge installation, was a major part of the additional expense. But what additional expense would be incurred from where it's at now, which I'm seeing is essentially at least the substructure of the bridge in place with no roadbed on top of it, or a subgrade roadbed on top of it.
That's a great point, and I'll give the developer the opportunity to speak to that.
I don't know who I would address that to, but
Yeah,
and at some time, I'd like to know what additional expenses are we incurring, and are the other crossings already preliminarily in also?
Yes, they're at a similar level. This one is much bigger. This, if I were to climb down into the arc of this conspan, you probably could fit a bus inside it. It's large. The simple answer to your question is DOT has some fairly rigid standards, and they have some fairly, they have manuals. They have design standards that you must meet. And in this case, I believe that their standard for this type of road would require longer pipe, longer walls. They would also require potentially a different type of material versus a split face block, which is this fascia here. it would be more of a poured-in-place concrete type element. And these wing walls are retaining walls. They just connect to a pipe. But I think that the combination of all of those things, coupled with, and a need for pretty extensive inspections along the way, is where the disconnect is.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the standard specs. It's about this thick, and I've got a copy of it in my truck. So that leads to my next question. This road originally was spec'd out by DOT specs, am I correct? It was originally to be built to DOT standards.
That is my
If it
understanding.
was originally spec'd out at DOT standards, why is it built to this proportion rather than DOT? Because you're correct, DOT has specific standards, and they also have a specified drawing of these particular structures. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on here.
I think, and I will defer to the developer and the engineer, but some of this has to do with design standards for roads include the materials, how you cross a stream, a litany of things, but they also include design standards. A road can't go but up and down so much. It can't make a radical turn if it's a DOT road designed to a certain speed. In this case, I think the anticipation was to raise the road, but the reality is that there's about 20 feet of dirt fill there to fill in. That's basically a U shape.
Yes.
And so to do that and then deal with side slopes and other issues that push everything outward, I think that's
right.
That's where that realization didn't occur till much later. So, but with that, why don't I hand it over to the engineer and the developer,
Yes.
and they can speak
Okay.
to that.
Let's see if there's other questions for you, Patrick, and then we'll come back. Is that all right with
That's
you,
fine, that's
Commissioner
fine.
McKay? Commissioner Price and then Commissioner Markopoulos?
Yes, on this right here. Well, in our packet, there was a 2014 approval. Was that for the, in looking at the erosion control, was that for this type of road or for the DOT road?
So the road alignment, the design, the general design as indicated in the plan and is what we required, it hasn't changed.
The
It's
approval, though, was for the DOT.
built to NCDOT design standards and
Okay.
specifications, so that's.
So we
the-
really don't know what the effect on the environment will be with this road?
I can say that they went through the 401 and 404 permitting with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Environmental Quality.
You say you don't
They
know?
did- No, they did.
They did?
They did. So the difference is those standards, NCDOT has different standards.
Right, well, do we know what the impact is going to be? Is there going to be, wash, with, I mean, for example, when it rains really hard, if we're not using the same standards, what's going to be the impact? Do we know?
Well,
I
in
mean,
terms of
it's-
design, land disturbance, land clearing, they're required, and they did obtain, erosion control, stormwater reviews and permits, and a pre-conference and stabilization to deal with stormwater erosion control, any of those issues.
For this, what you're proposing now? Because we have something in our packet from 2014. Do we have I might have missed it. Do we have the approval from erosion control for this proposed road?
For this level of land disturbing activity, yes. Yes.
Our erosion
Yes.
control has signed off on it?
Yes.
Okay.
So with that, why don't I get?
And my other question, I also have a concern about, and you mentioned having a disclosure when the land is sold, but, we've had also situations, well, number one, it gets buried in the fine print, and you get all the way to the closing, and all of a sudden, there's a road that's not up to standard. But I think what I'm also concerned about is, for example, 15 years from now, and the road fails, and people may just, they may come to us. It says they did in a situation in the western part of the county, that, the road has failed. They don't, the developer is gone, and they didn't know that it was on them and not the county. So how do we actually protect the citizens or the residents from this?
That's the rationale for having the language included in the road maintenance agreement, the disclosure agreement, and the covenants that would be, and the plat for that
So
matter.
to be in the HOA that everybody has to pay dues or whatever, just in case, or at such time as the road fails and it needs to be reconstructed. Okay.
Commissioner Markopoulos?
I just want to double check a few things I think I'm hearing. So this is going to be quite a bit less expensive? Somewhat less expensive?
That's our understanding.
So does that then translate to savings for the homeowners?
I'll let the applicants.
Okay, so that's one question. So the road's going to be narrower, right?
So the original approval was they had contemplated paving 20 feet of asphalt. They've now decided, okay, it probably would make more sense to have it match the roads that are public roads in Triple Crown Estates at 18 feet wide, and that reduces impervious cover. And
Right, so that's a good thing, and less resources used and less land disturbance for a road that I understand to be very serviceable. It's going to be built to standards, right? And that's not the DOT width and all that, right?
that's right.
Okay, I'm curious about the finances of it.
Why don't we get the developer? Are there other questions for Patrick? Why don't we ask the developer to come up and,
You want this slide, or do you want the plat slide?
it doesn't matter to me.
there we go.
Why don't you leave that other one since that was well, never mind. Would you like to come up and answer some of these questions?
Not really. Name is Richard Pensy. I'm the licensed land surveyor on the project. Engineer's not here, so I'm kind of stepping in for him today.
All right, well, so we had a couple of questions, and maybe you can answer them, but if you can, that would be great. We'll go back to Commissioner McKee, and then Commissioner Markopoulos, if you want to repeat the questions that you had. And
I can, yes. I'm not quite sure if you all knew in the original plan that it was to be DOT standards, why this culvert and this particular crossing was not built to DOT standards to start with.
That, unfortunately, I can't answer that.
You'll need to speak up just a little bit.
That, unfortunately, I cannot answer that question. I haven't been with the firm long enough to know that the history or wasn't around during that time.
That is a concern for me. I'll be quite honest with you, because what I'm seeing here, the level of construction is very far along. I mean, your superstructure's in, your substructure's in. So technically, unless I'm missing something, the only thing lacking here is to grade this subgrade and pave.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
so, but it doesn't match the original requirements. It's not built to the original requirements. If I understand the original plan, is calling for it to be built to DOT specs. And DOT specs, as I'm sure you understand, are very specific as to what,
Oh, yes, sir.
what you've got to have, where you've got to have length, width, height, and everything, right down to the last detail. So I'm having a real hard time understanding that if this was permitted originally for a DOT spec road, why it wasn't built to that standard to this point.
Okay, that, maybe the developer can answer that question
I-
a little bit better.
I'm Danny Jones.
Yes, sir.
Maybe this will help you out a little bit. I took a shot from the creek.
Yes, sir.
That's,
please go to the mic, and so we could, I know you can't see the picture, but
pass this around so people can see it. I am the developer. I was told by my engineers, this is a geogrid block wall, that it would pass. I don't know why the state DOT knocked it down, but what they wanted was poured concrete walls like you see on an overpass, like on Interstate 40 or something. And we have documentation from personal engineers that say that this place will be intact for 75 years, just like any other bridge. We had people out on that job site documenting all this stuff. They've taken compaction testing, all that stuff. So I'm not a civil engineer, I'm just.
Right.
And, you know, there was, as far as the 401 permit, there were certain requirements, you know, required by the Army Corps. And I was trying not to impact that creek. As far as the roads, they are built to state standards. And this creek crossing is also, where the dilemma is on those block, on the geogrid block versus the poured walls. And if you go try to tear this out, you'll do more impact to that creek than you're going to help it, putting the money aside.
Commissioner Markopoulos?
Well, that's a whole nother interesting train of thought there. Still curious about that. So what does this benefit homeowners? Does it lower housing costs at all for them, or how the finances work out here?
Coming back on your question.
Is this a savings for the people in the future neighborhood? Does this benefit them?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I developed that first phase. Those roads would still be private if I hadn't started this second phase and pushed for those roads to go public. Triple Crown Drive, Whirlaway Drive was supposed to be private anyway, but I sold all those lots to one individual, so I didn't have anything to do with that road going over to the state. Mainly just Triple Crown Drive needed to be public because you can only have so many houses on a private right-of-way when I started this project 12 years ago. And I did not develop this second half until now, until the economy picked up. But yes, it would be a savings to the homeowner, to answer your question.
Other questions? Commissioner McKee?
Yes, in the preliminary plan approval information in our packet, and I'm making sure I understand correctly, the item number 7 on other submittal requirements, average price of houses, including lots, for each year to build out. That's got $1.2 million. Is that $1.2 million per lot, or is that $1.2 million for the proposed four lots per year build out? Or is that, are the houses priced?
$1.2 million would be the average price of a house in there.
Okay, that's what I took it to be.
Other questions? So I want to just make sure I understand, just to follow up on what Commissioner McKee was asking before, about the bridge or the culvert, whatever we're calling it. You all went ahead and put in what you put in before you came back and got the approval. If this didn't get approved, you're going to have to tear that down and build it to DOT standards? Is that right?
My option would be to go to an exempt subdivision if you all don't approve it, and I would just go with 10-acre lots. That would be my option.
Mm-hmm. And I think Commissioner Markopoulos asked this before, but if this gets approved, how much does that save you on building the roads?
Doesn't save me anything on building the roads. Like I said, I would have to tear those wing walls out and do poured concrete, which would do more harm I'd be better off just to go to the exempt lot deal.
And that would, if you did that, you'd have, that would mean how many fewer houses?
10.
Yeah,
Still trying to figure out this bridge. So there, you have documented engineers' assessment of that bridge, and it is a
We
structurally
had people
sound.
out there around the clock when it was going in. Everything's documented. But
And that's something that all the homeowners could see and have maybe referenced in their agreement if they wanted to, that
yes. I don't know why they turned it down. I was told that there's other wing walls like this throughout the state.
So you have the engineering to back up the fact that it's a
Yes, we
a
do.
structurally sound bridge,
I
which
do
is
have the engineering to back up the data.
just like when you get a building inspector questioning a beam. If you go get the beam engineered, then you have the paperwork to back it up.
That's correct. We have compaction testing on everything we've done out there, as well as the roads, just like I did on the first phase. The only thing on the first phase, I didn't have any water issues, anything to cross.
Other questions? I just have one last one. So you were here, we had this, you just heard this long discussion about affordable housing and how we're struggling to fund that.
I sure did.
And these houses are going to sell for $1.2 million. And if this passes, you're going to get some substantial savings. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to consider making a contribution to the county's affordable housing fund with some of that savings that you're going to see, that we may be able to support affordable housing.
You know, I still don't know what my final costs are yet. But, yeah, if I make enough money, I would donate something.
All right.
Well, there is already a payment of lieu for $9,100 for parks, so maybe we can add some for affordable housing as well.
Beg your pardon?
You already have a payment in lieu for $9,100 for parks, so at the end of your project, maybe we could discuss that again. That would be great.
Yeah, I'm out for that.
Commissioner McKee?
I've got a question for Mr. Harvey, if possible. Mr. Harvey, I remember distinctly an issue with Windfall subdivision on Old 10 about 3, maybe 4 years ago, in which the road was not built to DOT standards. There became issues with the road, and the residents were quite vocal. I got heavily lobbied to have the county pick up those expenses. I understand there's a provision in there that purchasers have to be notified that this is a private road. But is there any way that we can ensure that you're aware of that there would not be a repeat of that on this project?
Commissioner McKee, I'm going to give you the best answer I can, which is I don't think there's any step the county can take that is going to prevent somebody from approaching this board at some future date and demanding or asking for some form of assistance. I think that the recommendations we have made is that if you all see fit to approve this, is that there be declarations drawn up with several statements that these roads are not constructed to the applicable NCDOT standard, that here are the steps that would have to make them DOT standard, and here's the cost, and that if you wish to make them public, then you would assume the responsibility as a property owner to do that. I think that we have tried to make a recommendation that addresses that very concern. I will not be naive and assume that it's going to be 100% successful, but I think we have attempted to try to provide the developer some option to address what we know is a concern. In fact, have already identified that this cannot be a county issue to resolve. This was not created by the county, and it's certainly not our responsibility to address that matter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
You get your planning director.
Oh, yeah, please, come up.
Craig Benedict, Orange County Plan Director. There's one step that we added to the Unified Development Ordinance. Before the developer turns it over to the homeowners association, there's a required meeting that we hold to explain to the new HOA about what responsibilities they have, what are the common areas, what are all those guidelines, what are these conditions of the approval of the subdivision. So we go over with them, and this would be definitely one of those things that we'd accent. So this would be a way to, as it's turned over to the homeowners from the developer, we have a required meeting. That's another step.
Yeah, go ahead.
But with that, see, that's, my concern is this, that happens in the beginning. Is there anything that would be added to, I don't know, at the time of sale?
Yes.
You know, like 15 years from now, that you are on a private road and you are responsible with the other homeowners in case, you know, in a case where the road washes out.
Yeah, that is what we do. There's a road maintenance agreement document that gets recorded through the attorney's office that is affixed to each of those lots that stays on no matter who purchases it. So there's other covenants and pervious area requirements that we have. All these get recorded and are affixed to those lots in perpetuity.
All right. I think you can sit down, sir, unless we have any more questions for you. Thank you. All right. Are there any further discussion? Did you get your cell phone back, by the way? Okay. All right. Any other discussion? I want to, Commissioner McKee, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please.
Well,
I have a question, so if
no,
you're going to
no,
make
after the question.
some kind of action. So I want to ask our council, can we put into this condition something like the payment in lieu for the parks and ask for a payment for affordable housing as a condition of this?
No, sir, that would be akin to an impact fee, and I believe that would be quickly overturned in a court.
All we can do is rely on the good faith of the developer.
Yes, sir.
All right, Commissioner McKee?
That actually was going to be one of my comments. I understand and I appreciate the efforts of this board and the intent of this board to try to further affordable housing, but I would object to us encouraging, would be a polite word, a developer on the fly in a meeting under duress to go to this route. I'm not implying that was the intent, but if I was standing there and that option had been given to me, I would not feel that I had a choice but to agree to it. And I strongly encourage us not to do that on the fly. If we do it as a policy or put in a regulation or something in place to require that sort of fee, like an impact fee that we had, like a Parks and Rec fee, but to do that in a meeting on the fly, I really object to that. To this project, I remember it, and I voted for it. I have a real concern about, and it's more than just the road, I have a real concern about making an adjustment to a prior approved project using DOT standards to now reducing those standards on a project that serves $1 million plus homes. I'd have an objection to it on it if it was serving $40,000 homes. But at least on a $40,000 home, maybe the savings would be appreciable to the owner or to the buyers. I'm interested in hearing what other board members think, because I have some real concerns on this.
Well, I just want to respond to your comment, and then you might remember when the developer was here for the Hillsborough EDD, nobody on this board showed any restraint in asking him on the fly to change the setbacks, to change the boundaries, or anything else. So I just, there's precedent for making the request in this forum.
Right.
And so I just wanted to be clear that my comments were, I believe, consistent with what we have done. And I think, to your point, to the extent a developer might feel pressure, it's the same thing when you say, will you plant the trees 5 feet away from each other instead of 10 feet away from each other? So,
And I understand, and I can appreciate that. I had a level of concern then. It just didn't rise quite to where it went tonight.
right, so I just want to be clear that's where
And
I
I'm
was
not
coming
impugning anybody at all by saying
from.
that.
No, I understand, but I wanted to be clear that that's not
Yes.
something that hasn't been done before.
Right.
Commissioner Markopoulos?
So one of the fundamental questions is this private road going to be built to any fundamental standard, any standard of quality? And it is being built to the UDO standards, right? So that indicates to me that it is going to be built to a level of quality that makes it a bona fide road, right? So could you just confirm that? I mean,
It has to be one or the other. Either it meets the Class A standard, private road
yeah.
standard, or it meets the DOT standard. There's no middle ground.
So I believe it's a functional road system.
Commissioner Rich?
Sir, I don't remember your name, I apologize, but I recall when we did this the first time, we also talked about affordable housing. So this is not the first time you heard about affordable housing from us. So if you were insulted by that, I apologize also, but it's part of our conversations, and you can see from tonight, it's part of our dialogue over and over again, that we encourage developers, we encourage people that are building in Orange County to think about what we can do for affordable housing. And I know we talked about it with you already, so I just wanted to put that out there.
And I didn't apologize. I don't think I did anything wrong.
Well,
so I just want to make
it-
clear.
that's fine. I'm just saying if anyone was insulted,
Yeah, well.
I apologize for that.
All right, so any other discussion? I mean, I think, go ahead,
Yeah.
Commissioner Price.
So my understanding of this is that as long as there's nothing we can really do to stop this at this point, right? We just have to approve it. I mean, if it's going to be built to county standards, as long as that's approved.
No, we could vote it down, and then the developer would have to go to an exempt subdivision. I mean,
But, I mean, on what grounds? I mean,
on the
if,
grounds that the permit said it was going to be built to DOT standards, and they went ahead and built this bridge the way they built it.
now that I think, yeah, that I have an issue with, that it's already built, but the fact that they want to build it to county as opposed to state standards.
Well, they can't do that unless we approve this modification, right? And I think,
But, I mean, do we
it
have to
seems
have
like the
ground?
options before us are we approve the modification, or we don't approve the modification, and if we don't, what we heard from the developer is, rather than tear the bridge down and build the thing to DOT standards, I'm not want to put words in your mouth, I'm just echoing what I heard, that he could just make it an exempt subdivision by reducing the number of
Yeah.
lots, and then the road they can build, it's just a private road, and they could build it however they want. Is that right?
But I was just wondering, like, on what grounds do we have to reject their request, other than the fact that they already started building?
Well, I think that's what the developer is saying, is that the Plan B would be an exempt subdivision and proceed onward with 10 lots. I don't think that there's a wooded or a pastoral or a meadow option C. I suppose theoretically there is, but I think he's indicating it's either A or B.
And maybe the attorney can answer this. I mean, I don't think we need any grounds not to change something we've already approved.
That's correct. You do not. You can vote against this or support it. Either way, as you've heard the two options.
So I think that's the difference, is this has already been
Yeah, that I know. I mean, I remember the first phase of this when I was on the planning board. We approved it.
All right, so we're at the decision point then. What do folks want to do?
So I'll make motion, but do I just have to do part 3, or do I have to go through all 3 of those? Is it just a motion to approve the plat that's submitted in the resolution approved contained in attachment 9? Is that I just want to make sure I'm making the right motion.
Yes, the motion should be to approve this application and the plat and the resolution of approval contained in attachment 9.
Contained in attachment 9. Okay, so that's that is my motion.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, no, does this include, that resolution includes all the stuff about the informing, the disclosure statements and everything else?
Yeah, that's all in the conditions,
That's all in the
conditions of approval at attachment 9.
I just want to make sure that that's what the motion was, okay.
All right, then. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No. Motion passes 4-3. Dorison, McKee, and
It can't
Jacobs.
pass 4 to 3.
Oh, no,
It's
it's
6
3 to
6
3.
to 3.
3 to 3, that's right. So the motion does not carry.
Well, depends on which Robert's Rule of Order you go by, I guess.
Well, there's only 6 of us. I just miscounted. I mean,
No, with a tie.
well, the motion doesn't pass with a tie.
That's correct. It's, there is no approval if there's a tie.
So there's no approval, but given that it's deadlocked, we could bring this back when Commissioner Burrows is here, if we want to do that.
That'd be fair.
Yeah, I'd certainly be open to that. Can we do that?
I'll move that.
All right.
I'll second it.
Counselor, can we do that?
You can move to continue this matter to a date whenever, at the next meeting, whenever Commissioner Burrows is going to be back.
All right. So there's a motion. Commissioner Jacobs, will you amend your motion to continue it to a date certain?
Yes, to April 17th.
Is that a regular meeting?
Yes.
All right, so a motion to continue this to April 17th.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That passes 6-0. Okay, so we'll revisit this on the 17th.
Can you tell me who seconded that motion? I could not hear.
The continuing motion?
Yes, it
Was
was
seconded by
by
Markopoulos,
Okay,
was
thank
made by Jacobs. And you got the count on the vote? Okay. All right. Sure, come on up.
I have a letter in my safe at home from 2014 that says my approval from you all was based on these roads being private. If you want to go back and look at the 2014 letter, do you have a copy of that?
I presume we do, if it's a letter that came from the county. We'll make sure that's before us when we consider this again, although I'm not, we can get information from the staff on.
And say that, so the rub is that the language says built to NCDOT standards. So whether it's public or private, it's to some extent irrelevant. It's meeting those standards. So that's our position.
All right, well, we'll certainly have that before us when it comes again on the 17th.
Okay.
Thank you.
And can we have a history of the voting from 2014? Because I would be surprised if I voted in favor of private roads built to DOT standards.
Sure. We'll include in the agenda item the 2014 review. The minutes of that meeting, just the minutes of that meeting. All right. Very good, thank you. Next up is item 6B, site acquisition, development of a multipurpose county campus. The board will consider voting to authorize the manager to proceed with the acquisition of approximately 21 acres located within the Hillsborough Highway 70 Cornelia Street corridor, known as the Highway 70 Site Assembly, for the purpose of development of an Orange County North campus site that addresses multi-county campus investment plan initiatives, and to authorize the manager to execute the necessary documents for closing the transaction upon final review of the county attorney. Jeff Thompson is here to make the presentation, and there are several folks signed up to speak to this too. So after the presentation and questions, we'll hear from the members of the public who are waiting.
Thank you, sir. Jeff Thompson, Director, Asset Management Services. I'd like to briefly go through a little bit of the history back to January the 23rd when we met and we received your authorization to move forward with the examination of the property that we're calling the Northern Campus. We'll review a bit of the decision matrix behind that, along with the due diligence findings, a timeline, and then back to your Q&A and the public comment. If you recall, we looked at the downtown sites, both the existing detention facility and the land next to the justice facility, and essentially deemed both of those unfeasible due to several issues. The excessive cost for detainee housing as we were to build on the existing site, the lack of expansion capability, the challenging zoning compliance with the town of Hillsborough and the permitting process. We also looked at what we call the major business forum site as a campus for the detention center as well as the ag center. That had its set of challenges that deemed it unfeasible, primarily the extension of the force main sewer connection, an expensive acquisition cost, and a facility that was on that site that was really too much for our need, and the problem with removing that from the commercial tax base. We settled into an offer and an acceptance of a purchase and sale agreement on the Northern Campus Assembly amongst two sellers, Ms. Tilley and Ms. Copeland, and we're under contract, as you know, for the purchase of those properties. This property has several advantages. It's of adequate size for expansion. It has available water, gravity, sewer, and water accessibility. It has great proximity to the justice facility as well as transportation nodes. It has staff support amongst the tenants for these facilities, as well as Hillsborough staff support as our regulator in this development. And as a single site for multiple facilities, it offers leverage in building one storm system, one road system, one utility system, so we can get leverage of costs. We've been through a significant amount of due diligence. It's essentially in three legs: the physical leg, the land records leg, and the land use leg. I'll start with the physical side. We have Tony Whitaker here from Civil Consultants, who has been overseeing most of this work. You see with the handout that the soils, the geology, the earthwork, the balance of the earthwork, the cultural and archaeological study, the environmental assessment, the phase one, the hydrology and the wetlands assessment, the stormwater treatment plan, the traffic access and geometry, and the utility access and capacity are all feasible. This is an ideal site for something like this. It will have issues as we get into the dirt, but from our explorations, our extensive explorations, the site is feasible. From a land record standpoint, this is a legal land record. The boundary survey and the title opinion and history are all adequate. We actually have a title binder from Investors Title for the property in hand. And finally, the land use, the site civil land plan that Tony Whitaker was very instrumental in, where we can lay out the uses as it relates to the needs of the physical site are in hand. And on March the 26th, we had a Town of Hillsborough Board of Commissioners approval on the future land use amendment change that would be necessary for this type of a development, along with the zoning amendment to the Economic Development District, which will be recommended, which will be necessary, excuse me. This follows a denial by the Hillsborough Planning Board on the 15th of March. If you so choose to move forward with this acquisition, we would move into a design phase. It's really a re-energized design phase for the detention and the Ag Center, since we've done quite a bit of that preliminary work back in 2015 and 16. We would have continued stakeholder input with both the detention stakeholders, the Ag Center, and the Environmental Center stakeholders, along with other stakeholders interested in the process. You would see a construction manager at risk approval, a contract approval come back to you before the break. And then you would also see a schematic design approval sometime in the fall, which would then, with your approval on that schematic design, would launch us into construction documents. In the winter of 19 into the spring, we would then come back to you with a guaranteed maximum price for the project. Again, your check to approve, and after that, we could begin construction in the better part of the year, going into the earthwork. The major earthwork would really begin in the summer. We would be using that springtime to set up, and we're looking at an 18 to 24-month completion beyond that for the full project. I'd like to mention the community relations that have been going on. I salute Todd McGee for his work with an extensive curation of the county website for all of the property information that we've been assembling, and also the contact and the communications channels to the public. We'll continue public information and input sessions. We had one on February the 6th, but we'll continue that process throughout our design and into the construction to maintain those lines of communication. The financial impact for tonight is a purchase price of $394,050. We are established to close this week. There's a little under $2,000 in closing costs. We have adequate funds within the CIP appropriated for the project, including the detention center, the ag center, and the park operations base. We talked about the park operations base being part of this because it has synergies with the Department of Environment, Ag, Parks and Recreation, and it also it allows the most efficient construction for the site. I'll go back to the manager's recommendation and stand down for questions now, or if you choose, the public comment.
All right, are there questions for Mr. Thompson? Commissioner McKee?
Not really a question, and you may have mentioned it, but I believe I also have asked staff through the Assistant County Manager, and I believe you were involved, to look at a parcel of land behind and I guess to the south of McDonald's. And that parcel also did not pan out. Is that correct?
We call that the Holiday Inn site, the one that's just west of Holiday Inn. It has a blue line stream running, really bisecting the property, which really takes about a third of that property off of consideration because of the buffer requirements. It also requires a force main sewer. There's no sewer to that property without an expensive force main connection up the hill, back down to Churton, or going the other way, which would be a lengthy run. So the combination of the limited developable size and the expense of the off-site sewer connection really brought that out of play.
Okay. And also, I don't know if you were aware of this, but I also had an extensive discussion with the Assistant County Manager about the possibility of bringing back the state owned site, and there was, as best I could figure, no possibility of making that site work. Is that still, I'm assuming that's still correct? I don't see. Yes. Yes, that is correct. So I just want to put out that these sites, there was other options that at least we tried to explore.
Other questions for Mr. Thompson? Commissioner Markopoulos?
So it seems to me our challenge moving forward is to make sure that we impact the neighborhood minimally.
Yes, sir.
Right? And originally I was thinking about the finished campus, so to speak, and how we would have proper lighting and whatever other types of buffering would work to sort of isolate that area from the neighbors, from the impact on the neighbors. And it occurred to me that during construction would be actually the most obtrusive part of the project. And so I just mentioned that, just I'm sure that that's been considered.
Yes, sir.
That's going to be the most difficult time. And along those lines, there's the potential for blasting there, correct?
Correct.
And that could impact wells and septic systems in the neighborhood, maybe. But I think to be on the safe side and to do the right thing, we should consider having a mitigation fund in case a well is impacted by some blasting, that we stand ready to cover that.
We can certainly look into that.
Commissioner Price?
Yes, it's along those lines similarly. First of all, I just want to say that even though we're going to more than likely move forward with this, and saying that, we've had the communication with residents, It doesn't say in this abstract, and I think it should have, that the Hillsborough Planning Board rejected the plan, and that they were responding to to the residents in and around the area. I just think that that should have been stated, so that it doesn't look like this was unanimous with everyone. Even though the town board went along with it, there are people that are in opposition to this. And to that extent, I know that in our packet, we just have concept drawings, but I would ask that we also, as you continue to develop this, that you look for ways to mitigate the impacts of light and noise when it's finished, so that it doesn't look, because I mean, when I go down 70 and look to the, to the left, it looks very pleasant, very pastoral, and then I realize, oh my gosh, that's where the detention center is going to be. So if there's a way that when we're, looking at the, or when you are designing this, to figure out a way to, decrease the negative impacts or the adverse impacts aesthetically, so that neighbors are not sitting right up against that maybe it's the garden for the Parks and Rec as opposed to a parking lot or whatever.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Well, I'd like to thank the Hillsborough Board of Commissioners for approving the rezoning. I did hear you mention that the planning board voted unanimously to reject that.
Yes, yes, sir.
So I would like to see, I thought Commissioner Markopoulos, you made some good points about the mitigation. And the way that OWASA did the mitigation at American Stone is that people don't have to prove that the blasting caused the damage. We accept it at face value. And so I would suggest that that would be our policy. I would also like to suggest that we set up something, maybe the first, on a Monday night every quarter, we have a public information meeting, and we invite the neighbors to come and tell us what their complaints are, if any, ask us any questions, make a presentation on where the project stands, make it as interactive as we can, so that if something does arise that we haven't contemplated previously, we can try and address it as soon as possible and not have it where people feel like they have to come and be our adversaries, but that however we got to this point, from here on, we're neighbors.
Yes,
and
sir.
we're going to try and treat them that way.
Absolutely.
And then to the board, I would hope we'd go back to the discussing what we would name this facility in the near future, assuming we can make sure we can find Mr. Rustin's family and make sure that it's not a problem with them.
Or with the community, because there may be some people that object.
In response to that, Commissioner Jacobs, that I've turned that over to the HRC to locate the family and to ask that question.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rich?
So along the lines of what Commissioner Jacobs is saying, if we could, and I think Todd did a great job by putting together information on the website. If we can keep that updated all the time, that would be great, and drive people to the website to find information, because as we know, information gets out there that's not truthful, and then we have to go and we have to backtrack and start messaging all over again. So if we can just be ahead of the message and make sure that every bit of information that we need to get out there is on the website, there's always that backup, and we could drive people there. So I'd appreciate that, along with everything else. And I just, when we blast, aren't the companies that are blasting, don't they have insurance also to cover, like we're dealing with this in another area of town right now? Isn't that the case, that the folks that are taking part in the blasting do have some sort of insurance?
Well, I can't say specifically about any companies, but they should, yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Markopoulos?
To Commissioner Rich's point, that is what Commissioner Jacobs was referring to in the case of OWASA and the American Stone Quarry, just in order to eliminate contention and all that long, drawn-out process, we at OWASA said, we'll take your word for it, we're working together on this, and that avoided that litigation phase. And actually, it worked.
Yeah.
People did not take advantage of it. There was a couple wells that were redug. It worked.
Commissioner Price?
Yeah, to Commissioner Jacobs' point, when I said that I would have liked to have seen the vote of the Hillsborough Planning Board in here, I know that Mr. Thompson mentioned it just now. I'm talking about when people are seeing this in advance of our meeting, that it was not in here. But other than that, I mean, I'm very happy with the way, you know, with his presentation. I'm just talking about the advance notice that people would have.
Well, that's a good point, and Commissioner Rich mentioned what a good job that Mr.
Right,
McKee did.
exactly.
Maybe that could be incorporated going forward in the narrative, so that it's clear that that was part of the whole
Right.
history of the process.
All right, because otherwise, I have to hear, well, they didn't say.
Right.
All right, why don't we hear from the folks in the public who have been waiting patiently, and then we can continue the conversation. So Billy Holloway and then Mark O'Neill, if you all still here. And then Sheriff, I want to get you in after that, so don't leave.
Thank you, Commissioners, for listening to us talk. I feel like this is going to be a done deal. It's going to happen, and I see it has its good points, and it's got its bad points, especially for me, because I want to live within 100 foot of it. And I know during all this construction, there's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be vibrations, and I've talked to Jeff. We've reached an agreement on some problems that we've had already, which I'm sure Jeff will work with me. But I just like to make it a public notice that, you know, I'm retired, my wife's retired. Some mornings we like to sleep to 8 o'clock in the morning. Construction's gonna start at 6:30. There's gonna be vibrations, there's gonna be all kinds of noise. I mean, is there some kind of barrier could be put up? I mean, I know it's going to disrupt everything. I've been in construction work all my life. I know what it's like. And I'm just looking after, you know, what's going to happen. I feel like talking to Jeff that, you know, we can work things out. And, you know, I just like to put this out in the open air where everybody hears my concerns. And, you know, the vibrations, it can affect the foundation of your houses, your walls inside your houses, your wells. And I mean, it's all the way around. It's a big concern, you know. Also, like I said earlier, I'll be within 100 foot, well, really less than 100 foot where all this is going to be going on. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Mark O'Neill?
Mark O'Neill, I'm with Pickett Sprouse Real Estate, and I was involved in the site selection process and got to know both the sellers quite well. Ms. Betty Tilley is not able to be here tonight, and I think she wanted me to share a couple of comments with you. She had sent a letter, which I provided to the county clerk, that basically identifies some of the positive things about the site. Obviously, the location, easy access to I-85, the fact that it takes some pressure off the traffic from the historic district. But I think the last point which she shared with me today, she is retired from the Orange County school system, and she asked me to share with you that she's very proud and pleased that the county is going to repurpose her site and to make it a long-term use for the county. So those were her comments, and I thank you. And I would also like to say that the other family members in and around the site have been very good to work with, and you know, we certainly appreciate that and thank them very much.
Thank you. So in the interest of getting the full story of what's happening, I asked the sheriff to be here, and maybe you could just say a few words about how critical the need is for our new detention center, because I feel like that's getting a little bit lost in this conversation, and I know lots of folks probably happily have not been in the current detention center, and so maybe you could just share some of your perspective on that and the need.
I appreciate that, sir. Yes, the detention center is aging. It is, has some serious challenges. I tell you folks when you come in to take the tour of the facility that, one, I'm not proud of it. Two, that it's not reflective of who we are in this county. And I always ask you when you leave, did you notice anything unusual? And they all say the people working there. They got their heads up. They're looking in the right direction. Their interactions with the inmates are positive. The inmates are looking up. And there's one thing that's there that a lot of people overlook when they ride by it. And I think it was really interesting that one of the planning members from the Hillsborough Planning Board asked, where is the jail? There's hope in that building. And we want to bring more hope to those folks that have to be there, both in front of the bars and the folks behind the bars. There's a lot of work gone into this project, and a lot of people have worried about what would happen to their land. We've all worried about how this project would go wherever it went. I think that everybody has accepted the fact that progress is going to come, change is going to come. And that's a real difficult thing to swallow sometimes. But everybody's okay with it. And I'm pretty proud of that. I will tell you that some of the challenges in the building that we have are structural. Some of them are structural, if that's a word. So everyone understands there's a need. The folks that are there, a lot of them don't want to be there. I understand that, but it's a necessary evil for a civil society, and that's pretty much all I got.
I appreciate that. Is there any questions for the sheriff? Go ahead.
Could you just explain, this is one of the concerns that's been raised, the amount of back and forth, in and out, the traffic that would be, around the jail?
About the same as it is now at the jail we have. We did a study over a weekend where we started on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, and we counted until, and I reported this to the board some time ago, to the Monday morning, and it's going to fluctuate, but it was about 6 people walking and about 4 cars driving to deliver inmates at night. It just depends on what happens in Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and UNC. I can't predict traffic patterns. We could do a traffic study and extend this for a lot longer, but...
Well, no, you've answered the question that some people were thinking that it was going to be all night long patrol cars coming in and out with sirens. But you're saying it might be 4.
And I appreciate that and respect that comment. The thing about our operations is it's not centrally located. We don't even come back to the office so often now for briefing. We do that electronically. So the cars that are running the sirens are out in the county. Now, when something happens out in the county that requires all of us to go to, yes, ma'am, they're sirens. But they're downtown Hillsborough and they're leaving. They're not coming in. Again, we are a necessary evil.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate you hanging in there this long. All right. So now we are at the, there's a recommendation from the manager to authorize the manager to proceed with the acquisition and to sign the necessary documents for a closing transaction upon final review of the county attorney.
I've got a question on that.
Sure.
And I guess I'll address it to the manager. If we approve this tonight, we are simply approving the acquisition of the land. We're not approving specific uses, or are we?
We are, I would say we're approving specific uses, because if this is approved tonight, we will start meeting with the designers for that land once we close on it tomorrow.
Okay. I totally support the need for a detention center. I, as you are aware, have had concerns over the need for another ag center or another office buildings, considering our budget constraints. I've had these concerns for years. I've expressed them before. So will we have another opportunity to approve specific projects as we go forward?
We will have, during the CIP, you will have that opportunity. One thing I will say is that if all are not included in this, the economics of this project doesn't work because of the cost, and some of that, the economies of scale help the project, support the whole project, even the detention center. It even supports the detention center. So between now and the adoption of the budget, which is June 19th, there will not be significant work done that we could not change if there were a change by this board. So there is time to have those discussions.
So if I understand what you're saying, that other than the purchase of the property and the intent to move forward with the detention center, nothing is set in concrete with this vote?
Well, I mean, I guess if I can't really answer that right now, because I'm aware of the economics of trying to make this work. And putting some of those, I guess if we didn't do anything at all with the others, and we weren't going to build them any other place or do any renovation, I'll defer to Jeff on this, but I think I'm saying what's right.
Ma'am, if you recall to the March 21st, 17 item where we talked about the options for the Ag Center, and the direction of the board was to go into the Cornelius corridor and look for a greenfield site to develop. And those dollars for that are already appropriated in the capital budget. Those are $17, $18. The other option was we actually offered the renovation option for the Revere Road site, as well as the greenfield options. And the discussion was to move to the greenfield option and then repurpose the Revere Road site in March.
I'm aware of that discussion, but I'm sure you're aware of my opposition.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
All along.
But the point
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The point I'd like to reinforce is the money's already appropriated for the greenfield site for the Ag Center.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the manager to proceed with the acquisition of this land for the express purpose of the project as envisioned with the detention center, the agricultural center, parks and rec component.
Second.
Commissioner McKay?
Yeah, I'm going to vote in favor of this motion, but as a heads up to the board, I'll continue to oppose the others considering budget constraints. So I'll continue to try to figure a way to delay those other projects.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded, and also, just to be clear, Commissioner Markopoulos, are you also, does your motion encompass authorizing the manager to sign the necessary documents for closing the transaction upon final review of the county attorney?
Yes, it does.
And the second encompasses
Yes,
that
sir.
as well? Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, item 6C, framework for the Orange County Development Summit. Board will consider voting to approve and authorize staff to proceed with a framework option allowing staff time to plan the event, to hire any outside consultants, planners if needed, and to identify one or more of the topics to be discussed in conjunction with the selected option. Todd McGee is here to make the presentation.
Good evening, Chair Dorson, members of the board. Glad to be here tonight. This is an item that y'all are familiar with. This was originally included in this year's fiscal year's budget, $30,000 appropriation from the Article 46 sales tax proceeds to hold an economic development summit. Similar, I think it was envisioned to be similar to what the Chamber, Chapel Hill Chamber does, their State of the County type presentations that they do. So we talked about that. That is one of the options that you have before you. But we also decided that we thought it would be good to give you some other options and maybe take it in a different direction, so it doesn't end up sort of being our version of the Chapel Hill Chambers event, but we can make something that's uniquely Orange County's event. And we also thought of trying to get it to a larger audience, because the county is doing a lot of great things in economic development to support small businesses in the county, farmers with the PFAP and those kinds of situations. So through the Economic Development Department, Steve Brantley's back here with me, right behind me, supporting me every step of the way. Came up with the idea of possibly doing a virtual Economic Development Summit through WCHL Radio in Chapel Hill. So that's the first option that you see. So that would be a live broadcast on the radio station. We would be down at the radio station studios. We'd have a different topic each of the 4 hours. It would be during Aaron Keck's show. His program, as most of you have probably been a guest on with him before, focuses on local government, local issues, economic development, things that are of importance to the residents of Orange County. And so we think the audience that he has is perfectly suited for the audience we would like to reach with this kind of programming. So that, again, that would be 4-hour programming, a different topic each hour, a different panel of experts each hour. We can have people from the community, stakeholders, as well as county staff and county commissioners on the panels. We would be getting feedback and questions from listeners submitted via social media. The radio station would do extensive promotion in the 6 weeks leading up to the event to make this something that the public is really aware of, that's going to happen, that they would hopefully have a chance to tune in and listen. You get a good number of people driving home in their cars, stuck in traffic on I-40 would be listening. And then afterwards, there would be a kind of reception type thing at the mall where the radio stations broadcast from. So again, that would give us also an opportunity to bring in the elected officials from the other communities and have that there. So that was option number one. Option number two is very similar to what we talked about. I think what was envisioned originally was something that would be here in the Whitted building. It would be a county presentation towards we would have an audience. We would have we would invite the movers and shakers of Orange County, the people that we would normally be at one of the chamber type events that would be here in the Whitted building. And then option number three we thought would be, and that would be in the fall, then or sometime in the summer, late summer, early fall. Option number three is sort of a hybrid of the first two. It would again be here, a live event with an audience. It would also possibly be broadcast on the radio station. And by the way, WCHL, I know there's issues about people in the northern part of the county not being able to get that station. They would be also simulcasting on the internet, live streaming it. We would be mirroring that on our website too. And if we can do it here in the Whitted building, we could even do it on the television like we're on tonight, using the cameras. And so it would be archived then on our website. People could come back and watch it later. The radio station would also archive their programming, could be accessed, for a year or so after the event. So that would be kind of a hybrid option. So I think what we're looking for tonight is, first off, to determine which option you would like. If you would want to go ahead and proceed with the spring live virtual event on the radio station, and the agenda memo has a date of June 13th. That's not a date set in stone. That's just a date that I picked out when I was meeting with the folks from WCHL. It's in between the last two board meetings of the year. It's before the last board meeting, which I think is the important thing, because I know a lot of you kind of take off after that last board meeting, and we'd certainly like y'all to be involved as much as possible. We also know parents are getting out of school, going on vacation. Audiences might not be as big as well. So that was a date that we picked. That date can be massaged a little bit here and there. Again, the radio station does want 6 weeks to adequately promote it on the air. So if you go back 6 weeks from June 13th, that's May 1st, which is about 3 weeks from now. So we've kind of got, if we do it in the spring, we're up against it a little bit. We need to go ahead and get that done. If we wait until the fall and do it, that gives us a little more time to prepare all of the topics. We can have a little more discussions with y'all. Y'all don't have to decide tonight if there's any specific topics you want. So that would give us a little more time to do it that way. And then again, you've got a couple of options for the fall. If you just want to do a live event here without any kind of media coverage, that's a little more easily said, that's a little more easily done than the other option, but the other one's not terrible, difficult either. So what we're looking, I think, for tonight is guidance on what kind of event you would like and when, and then some input on the topics you'd like to see covered. And again, the topics that are presented to you in option one were topics that we got that were provided back to staff from commissioners when we asked a couple of months ago for ideas on what you would like to see covered in this Economic Development Summit. So those ideas did come from y'all already, but there could be something else that's popped up more recently that you might like to be considered. So I think that's what we're looking for tonight, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, are there questions? Commissioner Price?
After these events, what next? I mean, what is supposed to happen afterwards? In other words, what's our return on our investment of spending the $30,000 and all the time for the preparation and having the event? What happens afterwards?
Well, the important thing is I think, we are doing a lot of great things, thanks to y'all's leadership on economic development. And I don't know that the average citizen is fully aware of all of the great things that we're doing, to supporting the local farms, agritourism, to trying to bring in more tourism revenue from visitors into the county, to recruiting businesses and industry. Steve's staff is doing a great job trying to bring in more business and industry. So a big part of it is educating the public about what is going on with the county, kind of an accounting to the public of how we've been using that Article 46 sales tax revenue that they voted a few years ago, with a portion of that being devoted to economic development. So it's not so much geared to identify hurdles and problems that need to be solved before we can move forward. A lot of it is about, here's what we're doing, here's how it's working. We will be trying to get feedback from the staff, from the people who are in the audience, about things that, maybe there's things that the county can be doing. We'll have some of the some of the beneficiaries of the various grants that the Economic Development Department provides. We'll be telling their stories on the radio. They'll be doing like 1 to 2 minute little snippet interviews with those, so they can talk about how this money, the grant that we got helped me start this business, PFAP, and the Seal the Seasons might be a really good example of a business that started out at PFAP and now is really growing. Those are the kinds of stories that we want to tell to the community, to let them know that what we're doing to improve the lives of the community, improve economic development opportunity in the community.
And at the same time, you'd be giving the information out, if you want to apply, you can apply.
Correct. I mean, letting them know about the grant programs that are out there would be a very big outcome of that as well, yes.
And the feedback would go back to Steve Brantley's office?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? All right, then what the...
Chair, I would have one comment. However we do it, and I think it's a good idea that we'll do it, but I would like to see us at least to some aspect cover that last bullet point, business industrial recruitment, because I think there is a lack of understanding from many of our residents on exactly what the process was and exactly what we did as far as incentives with the Mornaga recruitment and the Wegmans. At least feedback that I've got was in the form of questions that were not always on topic.
Commissioner Markopoulos?
Well, I really like number 3. I like the live event feel, and you look around this board and we're made for television, right? Face it. Instead of stuck behind some radio microphone. I just think it would be an exciting event to have people from the county here together. It would be more exciting. There's just a little room down there at CHL. I mean, when they moved down there, that's when they stopped doing the day-long community forums. They didn't have space. So that's my preference.
Commissioner Rich,
Yeah.
Commissioner Jacobs?
I like number 3 also, and I think it gives us an opportunity to update what we've been doing. Just sitting around in a room and having presentations and then have breakout groups, and I mean, that just doesn't work anymore. I think people don't want that kind of summit or gathering. I also would hope that we would Facebook Live so we can get some questions that are coming into us from Facebook and Twitter at the same time, so maybe have someone watching that station. But I really do like the idea. And I think that the 6-week promotion, as we get closer to it, would also include some of us going to the station and having, one-on-one or one-on-two kind of conversations too. So it all can be incorporated into this final event that would happen here. But I do like the idea of updating it and not just doing the same old thing over and over again.
And to address your question about the social, one of the things that the radio station would do would create a hashtag for the event and start promoting that 6 weeks out and ask people to submit questions on Twitter, comments on Twitter using that hashtag. During the event, a staff person would be monitoring that.
Right.
And I would most likely, I would try to inject myself into that as well, make sure that we're getting the questions asked to the right people at the right time during the event.
No, but that the Facebook Live is also an option of letting people participate.
Yes.
That don't have the radio station or are not able to stream it in. So that's just another avenue of getting folks involved.
I think that'd be a great idea. Yeah.
Commissioner Jacobs?
I agree with having interaction, both personal and electronic. I think it would be much more, it would have some excitement to it, as opposed to being either at a remote location or just recitations. I would point out, probably almost nobody here remembers, but the chamber took the idea from us. We used to do something similar to what they did, and when our economic development office fell apart, we were no longer capable of putting on any kind of presentation. And so that's when the chamber stepped in and took it over. So this would really be a return to the future.
That's a good point.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Markopoulos?
just to follow up on that, I think that this really could be the beginning of us reclaiming, as you said at a meeting last year sometime, telling our story. Because the chamber has a certain perspective that they craft the information around. But I think it's a good first step, and we got to reclaim that story.
Okay, it sounds like there's consensus for option 3.
Yeah.
So I think we should move forward with that. And if we don't need to pick the topics tonight, I think since that would put us in the fall, then why don't we just revisit that when we get a little more closer to the event, or on that timeline that would go with option 3.
We can do that because you never know what'll happen between now and then, so.
Exactly.
Something may come up, so, yeah, we can do that.
All right, do you need a vote on that? Or
I
is
think we would
is
like
the
a vote on
consensus?
option 3.
All right,
So moved.
Second.
there's a motion made and seconded to go for option 3 of the alternatives provided. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 6-0. Thank you. It's going to be a great project.
Everything on the radio.
All right, there are no reports, so next up is the consent agenda. Anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda?
F.
F? Anything else? All right, so is there a motion for items A through E?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for consent agenda items A through E. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That passes 6-0. Item F, Commissioner Price.
Yeah, just a question. This is about the Eflin, Buckhorn, Mebane area access management plan update. Will the community be able to see the plan prior to this meeting that you're going to have?
Craig Bennick, Orange County Plan Director. Yes, as part of our process, we'll have a community outreach meeting. We've been doing research, technical, environmental areas, and the like, capacity of some of our economic development zones. So there will be a community meeting that shows where some new roads could occur.
Right, that I know, but will they have a chance to see it prior to the meeting? I mean, will,
Yes.
like we have our agenda packets in advance, will they get to see it so that when they come to the meeting, they can ask questions or make comments and maybe suggestions that you may or may not want, but at any rate, so that it's more of a dialogue as opposed to just show and tell?
Yes, before, when we announce the meeting weeks in advance, we'll have copies ready for them that they can look at electronically or visit the office.
Okay, thank you. So I'll move this item.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on item 8F. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 6-0. County Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and County Commissioners. I just want to draw to your attention, there's an information item regarding capital investment plan information updates. This is kind of an update of some of our construction projects, and I just want to point out a few of them. The Sportsplex Fieldhouse is currently under construction, and it is on schedule and anticipated to be completed in the summer of 2018. Also, facility accessibility and safety upgrades. That project included installing security cameras, and all the cameras planned for installation have been installed and are operational. And then the Passmore Center, the project is currently under construction and also anticipated to be completed in 2018. And then finally, the Southern Campus expansion, we're in schematic design, and that continues to move forward, and the schematic design is anticipated to be completed by June 2018. So there's a few other ones in there, but I thought these were worth highlighting, and people in the area are aware of these going on, and to update them on that. So that is in your packet. I do not have anything else to report tonight, so that concludes my report. Thank you.
Great. Did Commissioner Jacobs, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question about the Sportsplex.
Yes?
We saw a document that said that the town of Hillsborough, having not required the developer of Forest Ridge to provide a sidewalk, was trying to extort it from the county. What happened with that?
I would defer to Mr. Thompson on that item.
We worked with the Forest Ridge Group. They were interested in a connection, and we have an interest in a sidewalk. And we essentially have arranged where Forest Ridge pays for the area that is on their side of 70 and the crossing over to connect to the sidewalk on our side of the facility. So we'll essentially have the sidewalk, but it will be enhanced to have connections, but Forest Ridge is paying for their component from our property line or from the DOT easement over north on 70.
And that's different from what was originally requested by Hillsborough?
Well, Hillsborough, the request came from Forest Ridge, and Hillsborough, if you recall, to 2009, we had a sidewalk planned, but we halted because DOT was contemplating widening 70, which really just mothballed that component of the original construction in 2009. That was lifted about the same time Forest Ridge was saying, hey, can we connect? So Hillsborough effectively helped DOT say in writing that they would lift that widening issue and allow us to move forward, and helped broker the structure with Forest Ridge. I don't think they were trying to be heavy on it, but they were trying to respond to Forest Ridge's concern and then get DOT to say that we could actually do something with the sidewalk. If that makes any sense.
Well, yes. Will DOT allow a crosswalk to be put in?
Yes, that's actually on the Forest Ridge component of the work. It's a stamped crosswalk. It doesn't have anything other than signage, but it's a safe crosswalk that will essentially connect that easternmost entrance directly across from the field house. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
But will folks know, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Rich.
Thank you. Will folks know that they need to stop driving when they see people trying to cross the street?
There's
I know it's state law, but it doesn't happen in Chapel Hill.
No, there's the adequate signage, and we actually requested for a speed limit decrease, but DOT is evaluated. Right now, we don't have a speed limit decrease, but we
What is
asked
the speed
for it.
limit now?
There, it's 45.
Ooh.
I thought it went down to 40.
It may have gone down to 40, but we're trying to get it to 35 there. But we're working on that, but it's the stamped and also the pedestrian crossing, the reflective pedestrian crossing signs. And sight lighting, not necessarily traffic lighting, but sight lighting on the sidewalks.
We need to keep an eye on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
County Attorney's Report?
Nothing tonight.
All right, then. We have one last item. It's item 11A. It's appointment to the Carborough Northern Transition Area.
I'll nominate, Anahid Vrana.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to nominate Anahid Vrana for position 2. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 6-0. There's some information items in your packet, and then at that point, we are done.
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.